All right, if we can get everybody situated here, we're going to get started here quickly. Good morning, everybody. We're going to call to order the meeting of the RSCVA public meeting for February 25th, 2016, meeting of the Board of Directors. Madam Secretary, can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Carasali.
Here.
Mr. Farahi.
Here.
Mr. Lawson.
Here.
Mr. Lucey.
Here.
Mr. Mavrides.
Here.
Mr. McGovern.
Here.
Ms. Schieve, absent. Mr. Winters.
Here.
Mr. Wood.
Here.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. And before we get too carried away, the mayor asked for me to share with everybody, so on the record, that she's unable to make it this morning because she's at the Mayor's Institute on City Design for the City Center Ballroom and Bowling Stadium in Oakland, and would just like people to be aware of that. So, all right. Mr. Farahi, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? All right. Flip that out. Let's see here. First out, we're going to do, we have general open public comment. I have signed in this morning quite a few people for public comment that a number of you have not did not put the agenda item to which you'd like to speak. I'm assuming a majority of you are here to speak to Wildcreek. If you're not and have signed in, this would be the time for you to speak. But is there anybody who would want to speak during general public comment at this time? Seeing none, okay. We're going to close public comment and move on down the road. I'm looking for an approval of the agenda this morning, but what I'd like to do is pull at this time, pull the election of secretary and treasurer and move that to our March meeting. So that would be general government division item 1. So I'm going to pull that for today. So other than that, looking for a motion.
Move to approve with the adjustment as stated by the chairman.
Second.
I got a first and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. Approval of minutes from the January 28th, 2016 Board of Directors meeting.
Motion. Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Mavrides, a second from Mr. McGovern. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Passes unanimously. All right. We're going to move on into our first order of business this morning is for Finance Committee, Wildcreek Golf Course. I'm going to make a brief statement, Frank, because now that we're on to the item that a majority of you are here to speak to today. This is a very important item for all of us here at RSCVA. But I want to make sure that we understand there's 3 minutes for everybody to speak during public comment. During those 3 minutes, please refrain from clapping. It does mess with our audio and our recording. These are recorded meetings for our minutes because they are for public record. So I would ask that you would please refrain from clapping or applause during the public comment. We are going to take a staff report first, and then we'll open it to public comment for everybody to speak to after that point.
Chair?
Yes.
Good morning. Are we allowing only those who didn't speak at the Finance Committee to speak?
No, Mr. Farahi. We're allowing everybody to speak this morning.
Okay, well,
We're going to hear, where everybody's going to get to share their comments with us again.
Okay.
So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our staff for our staff report.
Thank you. You have before you today an item that went to the Finance Committee last week, which is related to Wildcreek Golf Course. Staff has been directed to research the potential options for the future of Wildcreek Golf Course. And we're going to ask Steve Johnson from Johnson Perkins Griffin, Mike Bushelman from Bushelman Consulting, and Melissa Lindell from Wood Rogers to come up and join us and give a brief presentation. But to tee this up, we are currently losing about $150,000 a year on Wildcreek Golf Course as a going concern. The last 2 years, we have put zero capital dollars into it. So if we were to add a reasonable amount of $200,000 to $250,000 in capital to that $150,000 loss, we would be looking at about a $400,000 cash flow deficit at the course. Given that, the board has directed us to look at other options, as that is not deemed to be the core mission of the RSCVA at this point, and that's what brings us to this point. And with that, I'd like to ask our consultants to give a brief presentation, and then we'd open it up for questions, if that's okay with the board at this point.
That will work fine.
Okay, I'm going to ask Mr. Johnson to go first.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this morning and report my portion of this assignment, which basically I was brought in to take a look at the real estate aspects of the property. And to summarize that, the subject property, the Wildcreek Golf Course portion owned by Washoe County and the RSCVA, is 212.22 acres. There's 518.02 or 08 acre-feet of water rights associated with the property. The property enjoys good to excellent street frontages. I think everybody knows that. It's a close-in location, enjoys very good views of the Sierras and the Truckee Meadows. Utilities are all adjacent to the property, so it's ready for development. It involves rolling topography. There's a number of water features, I think, as everybody's aware. One of the challenges is the property, for a development standpoint, a real estate standpoint, is it's zoned and master planned public facility, which limits the development potential. So in order for this property to be developed, it would have to have the zoning and the master plan changed. We brought in Wood Rogers to analyze some of the constraints of the property, and Melissa will speak to that in just a minute. The real estate market today is very hot for residential land. Well, let me talk, first of all, the Wood Rogers plan, 504 multifamily units have been designed for it, or this is a very preliminary conceptual idea, but it gives us some idea of the potential. 192 cluster units, 536 single-family homes, total of 232 homes could potentially be developed on this property. It would probably require between 363 and 346 acre-feet of water to accommodate the development. On the economic side, EDON projects and forecasts that there'll be 54,400 new jobs created in the area between now and 2019. I think we all know it's Tesla, Switch, Apple. There's a number of them, and there's a lot of new companies and firms relocating to the area that are driving that job growth. EDON forecasts that there'll be a need for 5,000 new homes a year here in the area. The median household income is around $44,000. An affordable home is estimated to be, based upon that, at $225,000. In December of 2015, the median home price was $290,000, substantially above the affordable index. In 2011, there were 2,600 homes that were classified as affordable. Today, it's less than 200 homes, so there's a shortage of affordable homes. A normal, healthy supply of homes is about a 6-month supply. Today, it's estimated that it's around 2.8 units, or month supply, and some people are even reporting less than that. So we have a very tight supply for housing. Apartments, over the last year, the vacancy rate has ranged between, in the 2 to 3% range. That's extremely low. That's barely enough for turnover of the apartments. Rents have been rising. Our studies indicate in January of 2012, the average rent was $822 a month. The fourth quarter of 2015 had risen to $946 per month. So a substantial increase in rents. So one of the challenges, as I said, is that we don't have the zoning in place. If the zoning were in place, you would be able to expect a much higher price, or a higher price at least. But we are dealing with a superheated market, This property will meet with very strong interest on the parts of developers and investors in the market. There will be competition for it. There's a very limited supply of land that can be developed for residential purposes in the area. An auction would generate the best result, in my opinion, because I think we'd have developers and investors competing among themselves. So basically, that's my report on the marketability of this property. I think it's very, very strong at this point in time. Now, it can change. As you know, the market is cyclical. It goes up and down. So I think at this point, I'd like to have Melissa address the development potential of the property. Melissa's an engineer or a planner with Wood Rogers.
Welcome. Good morning, Mrs. Lindell.
Thank you. For the record, Melissa Lindell with Wood Rogers, and we were asked by Johnson Perkins to evaluate the opportunities and constraints associated with the property just in a as-is state. We looked at drainage. There is a Sun Valley wash that goes through the property. The Ore Ditch goes through there. We looked at developability in terms of access and zoning and surrounding uses, and found that it is a very developable site. 77% of the site has slopes less than 15%, which is very appropriate for development. Access and utilities are good, so it is a prime piece of property. We work with developers and landowners all the time with regard to large pieces of property like this. It is a property that would be very desirable and desirable for a mixed-use type concept. We were asked to, what would a mixed-use concept look like? There are many, many ways that this property could be developed should that be the decision to move forward with a mix of single-family, multifamily, and commercial uses. We put together one scenario, and that's just one scenario only, for about 1,200 dwelling units and some commercial land, about 10 acres of commercial land. It's just one concept, so Steve and his group could come up with some valuations on it. It does need a master plan amendment and a zone change. It would go to some sort of mixed use category if that was the choice. So in summary, that's what our job was. We looked at the opportunities and constraints, and there are quite a few associated with the property. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lindell. Mr. Bushelman, if you could speak to the effluent water with the city of Sparks as well for us, so we have a clear understanding for the entire board.
Thank you. My name is Mike Bushelman, and I've been involved with the RSCVA in their efforts to utilize water rights to support the facilities for many, many years now. And I've had the good opportunity to be involved in the Wildcreek Golf Course for many years. As part of this, we've been able to move water rights around in support of the golf course, and in an effort to make it a viable project and continue to support it during good years meaning when the Truckee River is running at its normal levels, because the primary source of water before the effluent was involved was the Truckee River. Unfortunately, during time frames when the Truckee River went through drought sequences similar to what we're experiencing now, the golf course suffered because of that. As a result, the effluent reuse program came to pass. The city of Sparks was the lead in that effluent reuse project, and as part of that, we put together a program under that reuse program to supply the Wildcreek Golf Course, and it was one of the very first customers on that program, and it was a very positive and a very successful conversion from Truckee River water, which was dependent upon snowfall and storage, to a system that was reliable during droughts and other times of the year that were short in water. So as a result of that, some of the water rights that were normally on the golf course, the 448 acre feet that was normally on the golf course from the river, is now been transferred back into the river to substitute for the effluent that's now being used on the course. That was a program that was done to keep the river whole and satisfy all of the interested parties on that river system. And then in addition to that, we transferred another 69 acre-feet from the Northgate Golf Course that had been closed to the Wildcreek Golf Course to help to dilute salts that may accumulate on the tees and greens, just to help provide another source. As part of that, the City of Sparks initiated an agreement back in it's almost 25 years, 19 years ago now, where it was the fees associated with the reuse program were a combination of paying for the facilities as well as paying for the water delivery, the treated effluent delivery. And that's the $300,000 a year that's obligated under this agreement. I've been able to meet with representatives from the City of Sparks to come up with options that might be palatable so that we can look at possibly either extending or continuing on with this particular reuse agreement, but an effort to help maybe reduce the prices. We've looked at that. We've also looked at terminating the golf course and using that water for other purposes, and recovering that 448 acre-feet from the river and being able to use that for development if that was the choice of the board. So we have a number of options that we can pursue based on the water rights, depending on where the board would like to go with this.
Thank you, Mr. Bushelman. So I'm going to turn this back to staff. I know that we had, from the Finance Committee, we had discussions in regards to alternate options to continue to operate as a golf course. So I'd like to hear if we had some of those options presented to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a couple of different options that we could consider. One, of course, would just be to write an RFP and contract the operation of the golf course out. The challenge or the unattractive side to that is you're really not out of the golf business. If you contract to a private operator, then when your pumps breaks, your maintenance and that sort of thing is still your responsibility. A number of private operators expect you to pay them a fee to operate your golf course. So under that scenario, you're really not out of the golf business, which was my understanding was was the direction that we wanted to head. Another option would be is if Washoe County, if Washoe County would take over the golf course. They currently have Washoe instead. It fits within their mission as a government agency if they were willing to take it over. And then a third option, of course, would be to sell it have Mr. Kennedy check into with the potential for a deed restriction, that we could sell the course to a private operator and with the deed restriction that they would have to continue to operate it as a golf course. So I think in a nutshell, those are kind of the three options that we've considered since the Finance Committee meeting last week.
So, Chair, I think it's appropriate first to get a report from Finance Committee, because if not, we're wasting our time having a meeting like that. And for the citizens who are here, they need to hear what the recommendation of the Finance Committee is to our board. So then we have at least a base to start with.
Thank you, Mr. Farahi. That was my intent after the staff report to bring it back to the board and have a staff, a direction from you, from the staff committee, for the Finance Committee, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We heard from our citizens at the Finance Committee meeting, and I, for one, as one member of this board, had been pushing to sell the golf course and get out of the business. But after listening to our citizens and their concerns for our children, for people who live around the golf course, for the open space, for all the other implications of selling that golf course to somebody who's going to develop it, the Finance Committee has recommended that we do not go that route, and we look for a third party to take over the golf course and for us to get out of the business. We will be completely out of it, not to lease it to someone else to operate it. But as we heard, you had indicated at that meeting that as a member for Washoe County Commission, that you will be talking to other commissioners to take over that golf course and incorporate it as part of the total package with Washoe County already having the staff in place and to manage that, the Wild Creek alongside Stead and Washoe. And I, for one, as one member of this board, would like to recommend strongly that this board pursue that course. And again, not for us to lease it to somebody else. No, that's not, we need to get out of that business. But for Washoe County, hopefully, to take over this course. And for all of you who are here, I have already started calling members of the Washoe County Board to tell them they need to take over this golf course. You need to give them a call. If they hear from you, they get enough calls, I promise you it's going to make a difference.
Mr. Farahi. Just stop, okay, please. Trying to maintain we're trying to maintain
I'm in trouble now.
You're trying to maintain a professional business meeting.
Step down off the soapbox.
I'm not going to make you sit in the corner. Okay, I'm going to take other questions from the board and direction, and any discussion from the board at this time. Mr. Mavrides.
Just a quick question, looking at the revenues and the rounds. It looks like the revenue per round, I'm just looking at the 18-hole green fees, is around $25, and the cart rental is around $13 for a total of maybe around $38. Does that sound right?
On a year-round basis, yes, sir.
Okay. I'm a golfer and sometimes not a very good one, but that seems like a very low, a small amount to pay compared to some of the other golf courses in the area. I'm just wondering if there's any opportunity, and I know that, you know, the market demands in that with an opportunity for increased green fees to help make up the shortfall for any operator, whoever ends up with the golf course.
Thank you, Mr. Mavrides. Mr. McGovern.
Thank you. I guess a quick statement is that we can't always make our decisions based on strictly the financial ramifications of what we look at on a profit and loss statement. But I think we have to have that information available to us so we can weigh it against everything. So if I look at the forecast without capital, Wild Creek is scheduled to lose $1.7 million over the next 5 years. Brian, is that pretty close?
That looks to be correct, yes.
Okay. So a couple questions I have is, do we know the value of the water rights?
I would defer to Mr. Bushelman on that, but my understanding is they're worth about $5,500 to $6,000 per acre foot currently on the open market.
And that times how many acre feet?
We have 514 acre feet, I believe.
Okay. How about appraisal of the land, two ways, both for a golf course and best use?
We have prepared some preliminary analyses. We're far from a completed appraisal, but I brought in a golf course appraiser. It's all he does, Ron Carciera from Auburn. And this dates back to May of 2015, so almost a year ago. Ron felt that the golf course, if it were to sell simply as a golf course, would be in the range of $1,750,000 to $2,750,000. I spoke to him recently and said, Ron, do you think that's changed materially since then? He said off the top of his head, probably not. Okay, so that's that. Relative to the land value as for mixed-use development, that one's a little dicey right now just because of the strength of the market. Back in July, I had reported that it was probably somewhere $5 million, maybe as high as 10. And it's probably, going to auction, it could be substantially higher than that. The one limitation, however, is if we put it on the market, if you put it on the market, not me, as is, with the public facility zoning, the investors are going to see an element of risk there, and so that's going to hold the value down. I still feel you'd get $5 to $10 million. Okay. If it's entitled, which means the zoning changed, then it could double that easily. Very preliminary numbers, I want to caution you on that.
Round numbers, that's good. At least this gives us something to weigh against. And then the only liability, as I understand it, against the property right now that we would incur is the agreement with the city of Sparks for affluent water.
Correct. There's 6 years remaining on that at $300,000 a year. So in round numbers, we owe $1.8 million.
1.8 million.
And that's the only outstanding liability.
And that 1.8 reflects in the budget?
Yes, that is included in supplies and services at $300,000 a year in the budget in front of you.
I have no more questions.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern. Mr. Lawson?
Mr. Bushman, when you spoke with the city of Sparks, did you talk about what's left on the bond for Sparks?
Yes, sir. They went through.
What's the percentage of that 300,000 is on the bond?
Out of the 300,000, roughly 125,000 a year goes to the payment of the water delivery, and the balance goes to finishing off the bond. So about 175,000 to the bond, 125 to the.
So round numbers in 6 years, we're talking about 1.2 million roughly is
Correct.
owed to the city of Sparks?
Correct.
Okay, without the water part of it, that's assuming you're gonna use your own water rights. Although effluent water, just so everybody knows, is very intertwined in our community, and using effluent water saves us a lot of troubles with the sewer plant, which we all rely on heavily here at the other end of the valley. So just assuming that went the other way, that you use all your fresh water, you're gonna pull that 500 acre feet out of the river. The effluent will no longer be used, so that creates another problem. But, so I think my real concern is, I just wanna make sure that Sparks is whole in all of this. So we sell the golf course, that we need to at least get what's owed on the bond. And I'm sure we can work some stuff out from there, because the citizens of Sparks shouldn't be picking up that extra $1.2 million in the sale of this course, if that's the direction it goes. Personally, I would love to see it stay a golf course. It's in my ward. I like that spot there, and it's a nice little golf course. But we got to look at the practicality. I don't know what Wildcreek generates for room nights for the RSCVA, but I got to imagine it's not very many. Like maybe 1% of the people out there actually are out of town that are staying at a hotel. So it's from a practical standpoint for this organization, it doesn't make sense, which is why I'm in favor of keeping it a golf course, but getting it out of the RSCVA's purview entirely.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson. Any other questions from the board? Mr. Carasali?
Chairman, I agree with the Marketing Committee's recommendation, and John
You mean the
Farahi.
Finance Committee?
Finance Committee, I'm sorry. And Mr. Farahi's comments and Mr. Lawson's comments as far as the golf course.
Thank you, Mr. Carasali. Okay, I'm going to open it up now to public comment for everybody. So I'm going to call you up one at a time to the podium. If you walk to the podium, please. And please state your name for the record. Before we get started, though, I do want to make sure that we were submitted a letter from a Trudy Gerlach that's going to be put into the record in regards to the Wildcreek. So I will make sure that the secretary has this for the record. So first, Mr. Morris, Jim Morris, please.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name's Jim Morris. First off, I would think if it would be a great injustice to the city of citizens of Reno and Sparks if this golf course goes under development. I mean, we have enough in that area. It's an open space. We all love, I've lived here all my life. So I've seen this community grow from a little town to what it is now. And we're losing more and more open space. We're losing golf courses. And for us to have the opportunity to keep this as a golf course would mean so much to every citizen in this town. Now, for when you're talking about room nights, I own a business downtown, which I run a golf tournament every year. We have approximately 120 golfers that come in, and at least 30 or 40 of those come from out of town specifically for the golf tournament. And they stay at Harrah's, Silver Legacy, El Dorado, Peppermill, throughout the area. So you're talking, that's just my little tournament. So there are plenty of other tournaments that come into this town that you guys promote. And I think that the more you do that, if you do a promotion, I don't know how much you spend on your promotions in San Francisco or Sacramento or whatever to bring people to this town, to have that for us, you know, to have that opportunity for the golfers to come in this town and for the local citizens to enjoy that property, that's what it's all about. And, you know, my kids have all played at that golf course. They grew up on that golf course, and it would just be a terrible thing to see it go into a development. And there's plenty of other, you talk about limited space, there's lots of space around this area. Look at Wingfield Springs, Spanish Springs, there's plenty of room to develop. But to see this go down as a development for all the, you know, with the, how about the, about all the airplanes that fly right over that golf course on an hourly basis, if not more. How about that public noise to those people who are going to buy those homes? So that's just my thoughts, but I think it would be a real injustice to lose this golf course. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Mr. Ron Keel. And next we'll have Nancy Hathaway after Mr. Keel.
My name's Ron Kyle, and I'm representing myself. I spoke at the Finance Committee meeting as well, and I want to thank the chair for really doing a good job of reflecting, I think, the comments that were received during that meeting. Your comments today, I think, are very true to that meeting. And I'm glad the last person mentioned the airplanes. I golfed out on the executive course. There must have been 15, 737s come over during that round of golf. It's very busy. The other thing that I haven't heard mentioned is the value of youth employment. I think that there's an opportunity out there to really bring some kids to work and help maybe with the infrastructure, planting trees, that kind of stuff. The decision to move that property out of open space really needs to come before the public, the citizens of Washoe County, if that is pursued. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kyle. Mrs. Hathaway, Nancy Hathaway.
Good morning, I'm Nancy Hathaway, and 4.5 years ago I was drugged to Wildcreek and became a golfer. The human part of it, I'm going to let Dennis talk about the kids and everybody else with more information that I have. But I went out there and there was family. And the reason why I went out there is I was having trouble with my son. So I can't help but think that golf courses that create community and family have a benefit, and I wish that I had started earlier, so maybe I would have known more to bring my sons out, and then I meet all these wonderful kids that do these wonderful things and the people that help them, and then the open spaces. I was there Sunday, and the animals, which everybody else can speak to more about than I can. All I can do is tell you that it was so important to me, and I'm so grateful and thankful that you guys are listening to what was said last week and are going to try to keep it a golf course so everybody, generations, can enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Hathaway. Mr. Parsons. John Parsons, please.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to speak on this issue. John Parsons, I retired 12 years ago, moved to this great state of Nevada in this beautiful Reno-Tahoe area. And my main goal was to play as much golf as I could in my retirement. And that was pretty available at generally affordable prices. Then one by one, courses started to close. Northgate, Brookside, DeAndrea, and just most recently, Rosewood Lakes. And to lose Wild Creek would, I think, devastate this even more. And my thought is, with the growth of people coming in, homes, 5,000 homes a year, there's going to be a lot of golfers coming with all those new people. And that's why I think we should remain a golf course. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parsons. Mr. Wesley Griffin.
Hello, I'm Wesley Griffin. Thanks for the opportunity to speak in favor of maintaining Wildcreek Golf Course as the tremendous community asset that I think we all recognize that it is. And hats off to the RSCVA board members who also recognize that. I very much agree that what we really need to do is get this golf course out from under the purview of the RSCVA. Their mission statement is not to provide a community asset for the general public. When the golf course, it's my understanding, we've been down this road before and there was a lot of history and everything brought up, but when the golf course was given to the or assigned to the RSCVA, if that's correct terminology, it was for the citizens of Washoe County. It was under, at that time, under the Recreation Department. Well, that is no longer a mission of the RSCVA, is my understanding. So I think what we really need to do is we do need to begin to address the Washoe County Board to get them to accept the golf course. And I think maybe one of the best ways to do that, of course, is to corral as much community support as we can to do that. And with that in mind, I would invite everybody that is interested in saving Wildcreek Golf Course to become a part of a new Facebook page that we're starting. And the Facebook page, if you want to write it down, is Friends of Wildcreek Golf Course. And there's another one that we had a website before, it was called Save Wildcreek Golf Course. So those two places, if you're interested in supporting this effort, I would encourage you to become, to go to that page and follow that page, become a friend on that page. So thanks for the opportunity to speak. Hope to see all of you join community support to keep this as an asset. Thank you.
Next I have Laura McKenzie. Mr. McKenzie.
Hi, my name is Lorick McKenzie. Most people know me as Pat or Patrick. I moved up here, in 2005 when the big boom was going on for housing. But, again, my name is Lorick McKenzie. I decided I own property in Arizona and I own property here. But I moved up here because of the golf courses. And I, too, retired up here to play golf. And people have already brought up the fact that a lot of golf courses are closing now. And there is a big push for home development, apartment development, and things of that nature. And I just recently went and visited my sister down in San Diego, and she lives very close to Torrey Pines. That is a beautiful piece of property, and I bet you it could sell for billions of dollars. But not one person has ever asked about developing it into properties, ever. And I worked for a guy a long time ago. His name was Norm Peterson, no relation to the guy on Cheers. But he told me one of the hardest things to manage is growth. growth is the hardest thing to manage from a land standpoint, from a business standpoint. And I think we need to look at the benefits this golf course will play 20 years and 30 years from now, instead of being 400 houses. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Mr. McKenzie. Next I have Mike Brianley? Brierley. Mr. Brierley, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Mike Brierley. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before the board. I was also in attendance last week at the Finance Committee. I really want to thank the Chairman of the Finance Committee, John Farahi, for getting us where we are today. I had a big part in the beginning of Wildcreek. I worked for the city. At the time, we were successful in getting some BLM land, which is part of the golf course. That's under the Recreation and Public Purpose Act. Also, I was involved in negotiating with Joe Conforti. And actually, Joe stepped in and bought the land because we couldn't move fast enough. And eventually, City of Sparks decided they didn't want to take on the project. And Mayor Lillard was successful in getting the Convention Authority to take it on. There's been a lot of effort and time put into getting this golf course for the community. I think it would be a cold day in hell if this thing goes away. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brierley. Up next, John Hess.
Good morning. My name is John Hesse, and I wanted to say a few words on behalf of Wildcreek. Having lived next to the course for 35 plus years and seeing how it's evolved, first of all with the senior play of the senior golf tournament, and then having the different wildlife that has been over there, it just seems to me it would be a shame to take it away now. We have so many vacant properties around, whether they be little strip malls, whether they be homes, that to take an existing 18-hole championship golf course and for generations to come, it would just be a real shame. Just for example, down on Audi Boulevard and El Rancho, the old Lowe's store, empty, next to it, parking lot. If you're going to put some smaller homes in and apartments, and if indeed, as these developers had mentioned, the low-cost housing, it'd be a great place to build some apartments and accommodate the housing for lower income folks. So that's one of my concerns. My second concern is the fact that if these golf courses have been closing down, DeAndrea, Rosewood, anyway, and if there's people that are going to be coming in that are maybe a little more affluent, the Tesla and things of that nature, are we going to need a golf course? It seems like we would need one, and to put in 18 holes of golf, I don't know how much it would cost, but it's got to be a bundle to put this in. So I certainly would be in favor of some way, as Mr. Farahi mentioned, go ahead and get out of the business. That's fine. We want people coming to the Atlantis. We want them to come to the Peppermill, the downtown. We want them to play golf here. But you guys, yeah, step out of the business and get maybe the county involved in this thing and keep the wildlife there, keep the people there, and keep the people of this community happy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hesse. Next, Mr. Aranda?
Hi, my name is Brian Aranda. I'm the Vice President of the Wildcreek Golf Villas. It's a community of 136 homes that I represent. Closing the course could potentially depreciate our home values and perish our views. If you look at DeAndrea, how terrible it looks up there, it's all dried up. It would also drive golfers to play out of town and will hurt numerous local tournament groups. It would also drive my neighbors out of the area that moved there because of the course and chose Wildcreek as a place to retire near their favorite pastime. Perhaps rather than closing, we should consider reducing annual losses by boosting usage. For example, a partnership with the various homeowners associations in the Wildcreek community. We'd be happy to maybe promote on our newsletters or, offer some sort of incentive to our neighbors. And we feel this would be a real loss for the city and a tremendous step backward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aranda. Next, we have Mr. Bob Jacobson. And then after Mr. Jacobson, we'll have Mr. Boschi.
Thank you. My name is Bob Jacobson. And I know it's been mentioned before, but I'm going to say it again. There's too many courses that have been closed. They're public courses such as Northgate, DeAndrea, soon Rosewood Lakes, Brookside, and out in Verdi there's a course that was called Crystal Peak. Golf, very important, and it should be important to all the companies moving into town because it's a part of our quality of life. We can't afford to lose Wildcreek, and I wonder if that property has some stipulations on it as far as the use. That was just something that came to mind. Last week, Mike Mazzaferri was here and spoke, and we had something very similar happen with Sierra Sage. The county commissioners wanted to close it, and at that time I was on the Parks Commission, and we opted to do an RFP to bidders who were willing to take the financial responsibility off the shoulders of Washoe County. And that happened, and Mr. Mazzaferri and his team were awarded that contract, and that was about 5 years ago. And it's been extremely successful. The course is in greater shape than it was. Their revenues have, I think he said, more than doubled in that time frame. So that's about, golf is something you can play forever. I'm almost 83 and I'm still playing. So I hope to be playing way beyond that. And we enjoy Wildcreek. We like to play different courses. And that's one of the courses, both the 18-hole and the 9-hole course. So I hope this is helpful in your deliberation, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson. Next to Mr. Boschi. Bill Boschi. Mr. Boschi, it doesn't look like he's here, so I'll just take that off. Next, Richard Lawler. Okay, all right. We'll hold off on Mr. Lawler and we'll grab him when he comes back. Dennis Oliver.
Thanks for having us today, everybody. Appreciate it. And by the way, Mr. Farahi, you might be in trouble out here, but you're not in trouble on the outside. Okay?
For the record, I want to tell you the idea of Washoe County taking over is Commissioner.
John, you can't do that during public comment.
Okay.
Yeah,
I will make that comment later on.
I think it's better to keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Madam Clerk, could you start?
Okay.
Could you start Mr. Oliver's time over, please? Thank you.
Thank you. God, you're going to hear, already I've heard a lot of passion. Oh, before I get going, my name's Dennis Oliver. I'm currently the Director of Instruction at Wildcreek, 30-year PGA professional, head coach 20 years with the Special Olympics. That's the deepest thought in my heart. And you're going to hear a lot of passion about Special Olympics, about kids, about seniors, affordable golf in this today. But I tell you what, that's what golf is. Golf is like a big family. A golf course is like a huge family. And God, when a golf course goes away, I was at a PGA meeting at Hidden Valley, and I left that to come over there, and they're waiting for me to go back and give them a report of what goes on today. And I drove by Rosewood. I almost started crying. You know, I'm just thinking, my kids grew up on a golf course. My daughter was she's 7 months pregnant, and she was going to be here today, but she's an executive for Burger King, and they got a big robbery down in Carson City, so she was in the parking lot and had to take off for that, otherwise she'd be here. And I promised her I'd give her, she grew up on a golf course. She had 200 mothers and fathers, and that's the family atmosphere. That's what golf has always been to me, and I think those are the things that people don't understand when a golf course closes. I mean, Wildcreek, you're going to displace high school teams. If that, obviously, it looks like you're going in the right direction. But high school teams are displaced. First tee, that's a major stop for the first tee. Affordable junior and senior golf. These things are just so important to the community. And you know, a golf course is not a piece of real estate. Everybody's talking about real estate this morning. It's not a piece of real estate. It's a living creature. And what you're seeing here today is the blood that's feeding the heart of that creature. And it's more than just playing golf. You can play golf anywhere, but you can go anywhere and play golf. Golfers are going to play golf, whether the golf course goes away or not, but why displace this entire family of people for many different reasons that go to the golf course? And appreciate the thoughts about the Washoe County thing. I think is tremendous. Already have proven track record on with a certain individual there. So I'm running out of time, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. Mr. Lawler, Richard Lawler.
My name's Rich Lawler. I thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I'm so glad to see the turnout we have here today. I've been playing Wildcreek since 1980. I've seen the course at its best, at its worst, and right now that course is coming back. The staff up there, with limited resources they've done, I feel have done a fantastic job of keeping the course as good as they can. Nobody's talked about the staff up there. It's family. You walk in there, everybody knows each other. It's awesome. Everybody that works up there puts their heart and soul into that course. Some of them been there 17, 18 years. People there have families. They love that place. Wildcreek on Tuesday nights, not for the meek, it's full. If you don't call in by Thursday before that following Tuesday, you can't play. The Friends of Wildcreek tournament's full. The course is starting to come around. People are coming up there. The way they're marketing the course now, it is going to be a viable entity. Please, don't give up on the old gal. She'll do you proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawler. Thea Weston. Good morning, Mrs. Weston.
Good morning. Hello. My name is Thea Weston. Thank you for this opportunity. I am a parent of a special needs son and a Special Olympics volunteer. I would like to mention some logistics. Wildcreek is within our city limits and therefore allows special needs athletes to have accessibility through RTC Access Transportation as a designated service area. RTC can also drop off the athletes near the main building, which helps our athletes who are physically challenged. Wildcreek also has easier access to the practice stations, the putting, the chipping, and the driving range in close proximity to the main building when our special needs athletes need to use the restroom or to be able to take a break. Wildcreek also offers a 9-hole course separate from the 18-hole. I believe that Wildcreek is one of 2 to offer this separate 9-hole course. The second one is not an RTC access service area. Our athletes are able to play this type of course during our regional tournament because it's easier on them physically and allows them to be more independent. This also allows the opportunity and inclusion for them to play like their typical peers of a mainline sport. It gives them a sense of pride and joy to be able to experience and to see themselves included in as much experience as they possibly can get out of the sport of golf. Another concern is if Wildcreek closes, where does the special needs athletes go for recreational access to play golf that is within their community service area and access to a course that provides easier mobility to play? Northgate closed, Rosewood, and Wildcreek is now being considered. Private courses aren't always acceptable to the special needs population. Traditionally, recreational activities and local access has been a low priority within the special needs population. I'm hoping today that we can give these special needs higher priority by not forgetting them during this critical decision regarding Wildcreek and what it means to these athletes and parents by being able to participate more fully and independently in the sport of golf. We need to continue to place an emphasis on supporting children and adults with disabilities in a wide range of community recreation and settings by location and access. This allows them to be socially integrated with their typical peers within the community. In conclusion, I'm hoping that the public Wildcreek Golf Course will be kept open, and not only my son and us, but our special needs population can continue to enjoy Wildcreek Golf Course and what it has to offer. I would also like to note that the staff at Wildcreek has been kind, gracious, and open to accepting our special kids and adults to include them as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Weston. Mr. Peter Keehan. Sorry, I apologize.
Morning. My name is Doc Keenan, and I'm a president of the Sierra Sage Men's Golf Club. First off, Mike Mazzaferi wants to apologize for not being able to attend this meeting. He's at a business meeting in Arizona, and he was unable to postpone that. Mike feels that Wildcreek staying open as a golf course is very important to our community. He also feels that it's important, and he feels he can turn it around much the same way he did Sierra Sage. Why do we want to keep Wildcreek a golf course? There's several things. Closing the golf course will be endangering and displacing the indigenous wildlife. It'll be a loss of venue for the Special Olympics and several youth programs that are creating a new generation of golfers that'll need facilities like this. The loss of affordable recreational facilities for retirees. With population growth comes increased demand for more green areas, parks, golf course, and other recreational outlets. The golf impact on tourism. Many casinos have golf directors, people that set up golf outings for casino guests. They need outlets. With DeAndrea closing, Brookside, Northgate, maybe Rosewood, Crystal Peak, if you close Wildcreek, the fewer courses will mean more crowding on the remaining golf courses, which limits the openings for tourists to golf. The number one problem here, though, as I see it, is financial. Continuing on the current path is not going to alleviate the problem and is not a viable option. The course and facilities will continue to deteriorate and the cost will increase. So how do we turn a liability into an asset? Mike Mazzaferi was able to accomplish this at Sierra Sage. The course was days away from closing when Maz took it over. He built the course into one of the top public golf courses in the area, a showcase, a beautiful green area for the city, and an asset for the county. He more than doubled the rounds played. It's a good example of if you build it, they will come. Now, there's three options for keeping Wild Creek a golf course. You can lease it out, or you can sell it with the stipulation of it remaining a golf course. But it still comes back to the same thing. If the entity that takes over fails, it's going to revert right back to where it was before, and you're back at square one. Now, because of the intricate rules of ownership and control, maybe option 3 is the best, and that's giving it back to the county. They have management experience in these matters, Sierra Sage and Washoe, and with the addition of Wild Creek, 3 courses give them better leverage and make an attractive package that they can present to management companies. Let a golf course management expert tackle solving the problems of Wild Creek Golf Course.
Mr. Keehan.
Like they did with Sierra Sage and Mike Mazzaferri.
Mr. Keehan, thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you. Mr. Gurley.
Hi, my name is John Gerlich, and the Wild Creek is like a family, and here's all the pictures of all the athletes, and Dennis is not only the head guy there, he's also my friend, and closing this golf course would be terrible because all the Special Olympic athletes, they go to golf because it's not about winning or losing. It's about having fun. And if you take that away from all the Special Olympic athletes, the golf course is like a family. And just please do not close it, because it's like Ed and Dennis have been best friends for a very long time. And it would be terrible to close this golf course down. And it would just be terrible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gerlich. Thank you. Mr. Ed Gurley.
Thank you for listening to us talk for a minute. My name is Ed Gurley. I've heard a lot of very good things. I really appreciate what you said about his and his operation. It's been talked about the price of golf and so on and so forth. I like the marketing angle of some of the things that have been done. Eric does a fantastic job, I think, with this golf course. He offers promotions. You buy things in advance. You buy 10, 15, 10, 20, 30 passes at a time. You spend money in advance, but he's got the cash flow. And then in advance, if you don't use it, he's still got the money. Those things are great. I am with the Special Olympics. Dennis, I'm one of Dennis's volunteers out there working with these athletes, and these guys are special. I'll give you an example. Eric, who does run the golf course, he had a marathon. He ran a marathon to support the Special Olympics. Every year, Dennis has a tournament, and all the funds go back to that. Dennis doesn't take a nickel out of this. It all goes right back into there. But Eric had volunteered to run a marathon, and running that marathon was to raise money for the Special Olympics. Every one of these athletes came out. Eric stopped during the marathon and signed their hats and that type of stuff. I mean, he's competitive, but the kids were more important to him in that marathon was. I thought that was just super special. You know, it's been mentioned about the green area. You know, I hear an awful lot about green areas, and then we want to tear one down and put a parking lot type of thing. I think that's a song out of the 60s or something. I'm not sure, but that type of stuff. But it's also very affordable. It's affordable for seniors, which I am. It's affordable for the juniors, and like it's been said by Thea a while ago, it's a starting off point for kids. They can go out and play the executive course without any intimidation. They're already comfortable there. They can go to the main course after they've done that, you know. But the biggest thing is to take a real good look at what this is as a community effort. It's a fantastic community thing. There's an awful lot of good things that are happening there. I'd hate to see it go away. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gurley. Mr. Mark Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. My name is Mark Speaker, and I live at 7316 Lucey Drive in Sparks. I want to talk to you about what I call an affordable opportunity for kids and seniors. In my specific case, I retired, and then my grandson's dad passed away in an accident. So in 2014, I assumed the role of his male influence. He was 6 and I'm 69. And we found golf. We went out last year and played, took lessons from Coach Dennis and practiced on the driving range. Then we started playing the par 3. So I would ask my grandson, well, do you want to go over to Shields and hang around, or do you want to go to Coconut Bowl? And he'd say, no, let's go out and play golf. To be with him when he made his first par just is unbelievable. And then a couple of months later, he made his first birdie. And we danced and we pranced around that golf course because it was so much fun. If this board would allow Wildcreek Golf Course to continue to operate, I believe other kids would participate and maybe not go out to other gangs or malls or get into other mischievous activities. Now you can sense that I'm a little prejudiced, but my 9-year-old grandson can hit the ball off the tee about 160 to 180 yards, 60 to 70% straight down the middle. I believe and I'm confident that he's going to play high school golf here in one of the towns. And maybe he can even go to UNR. And I think it's all because we were able to do this affordable golf course at Wildcreek. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next, Bo Palika.
Hi, for the record, Bo Palika from Sparks, Nevada. I'm going to kind of just reiterate some of the things that some of these other people have said. Both my kids, they took their first lesson with Dennis through the Sparks Rec Department out at Wildcreek. Actually, it was a whole family group lesson. My son's come a long way since then, but without having Wildcreek in that par 3 course, he probably wouldn't have continued to play because the big courses are intimidating. There's only one other par 3 course in the area, and as they said, RTC access doesn't allow it. And the other thing is, and I don't know whether I can ask the question up, I'm going to. You say that Wildcreek lost $150,000 last year, and they didn't generate that many room nights, but how can you actually tell how many room nights they generated other than tournaments that they put on? I'm just going to propose a question. How much money does the bowling stadium lose every year? And so I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Palika. Stephen Sample. What's that?
Good morning, Board. My name's Steve Sample. I had the opportunity to speak last week at the Finance Committee. I appreciate that. What I hear from everybody here is that, you know, we talk about the wildlife up there and the impact, and we can do the impact studies and find out that, yes, it is going to be detrimental in the long term to displace all this wildlife. But what about the human condition? I mean, what about the impact study on our community? And that's not just the Special Olympics, even though I support that. You know, I think over the past 6 or 7 years, we've raised over $4,500 to put these kids out there on those tournaments, and it costs $50 a kid. But in the long term, I believe that this community is going to lose if it continues to relinquish public facilities for outside developers to come in and take these places over. There's a lot of land around Wildcreek Golf Course. Okay, in the past 5 or 6 years, I've seen homes go up there on, you know, on Sullivan and up there on the hill. Wonderful, beautiful views of the golf course. But if you've ever not played Wildcreek Golf Course, I would, and you're a golfer, even beginner, novice, professional, you get up there on the backside of that golf course and you look down over our fair city and you'll understand where I'm coming from, is that I think it's going to be a great loss if this is pushed through. We're going to stand together. We're not going to let that happen because we have the RSCVA right now in charge, and they're looking to get out of it. But wouldn't it be a great thing to be able to say, look, I'm going to pass this baton on to Washoe County, private investor, and be proud of the fact that we made it a successful adventure together. You know, so that's really what I look at is the success in long term as our children grow up and become leaders, senators. They sit on the board of the RSCVA and they remember this moment and they say, this was a defining moment for me as an individual. Golf is an individual sport, played with your best friends and what have you. But I would just caution the board when they make these determinations that it's far-reaching, it's far beyond just the wildlife. It is the human condition that we're looking at, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Sample. Mrs. Brandhorst. Get ready.
I am the United States President, and I am Kathy Brandhorst. I just wanted to let you know I heard that the Stead area was closed down. I haven't really heard the reasons why, but most of the time it is coming in with their machine guns because they cannot afford to pay for their services there. And I just wanted to tell you that afford to run it, that is the question. You're still stealing the water out of the river in order to water the lawns. You're also stealing money from the checks that say payable to Kathy Brandhorst. They don't belong to you. And charged with embezzlement. Lawsuits are growing on the properties of the golf course. You don't know how many lawsuits there are against all of you that are on the golf course because you can't stop them when they come in with their machine guns, can you? No, you cannot. You're just defenseless. Shooting down the wildlife is where you can't even afford to feed yourselves. The grocery stores are complaining that you have to go in to steal the meats out of the departments. And why? Because you have to shoot down the birds. You have to feed yourself by stealing the birds out of the area. This is not a golf course. Is this what you call a golf course? Yes, it is. And that's why you were all closed down. You never paid your rent. You never paid your water. You never paid your bills. That's why you're closed down. And you want to be opened up again. Make sure that you pay your bills this time, especially your rent. That's why you can't even afford to open up a golf course. I just wanted to tell you, too, when you have lawsuits and you can't afford to pay for those lawsuits, I've been noticing on the agendas at the county, I can't afford to pay my lawsuit. Charge it to the county. Charge it to the city. And this is the only way that you can have it open, isn't it?
Thank you, Mrs. Brandhorst. Next, Chris Dewar.
Hi, my name is Chris Dewar, and I am not the President of the United States. I am the Executive Director for the First Tee of Northern Nevada. I'm also an LPGA golf professional. The First Tee of Northern Nevada is a youth development organization that uses the game of golf to teach kids life skills, such as honesty, integrity, perseverance. We have over 1,400 kids in our program right now. 50% of our programming is done at Wildcreek. So if that golf course closes, it would have a huge impact on not only our program, but the youth in this community. I feel as a community member, it is our responsibility to impact, influence, and inspire our youth of today. So please consider keeping Wildcreek open for everyone. Thanks.
Thanks, Ms. Dewar. And last but not least, Mr. T.J. Duncan. That's what I told him.
Thank you. My name is TJ Duncan, Vice President of Duncan Golf Management. I'm not going to touch on all the passionate things that have already been talked about. I am, however, here to represent the private sector, to let the board know that if, in fact, they are willing to sell the golf course, there are entities out there that are willing to purchase the golf course and to keep it as a golf course. We are not developers by any means. We are in the golf business. We own and operate 3 courses in the area. We also manage 3 others for various government agencies. Being a local kid who grew up in the area, I played Wildcreek as a junior, obviously played high school golf here, collegiate golf here as well. It is a great asset to the community for all those various reasons. It is an opportunity for affordable golf, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. I have no other members signed in at this time. I'm going to open one opportunity for anybody who would wish to speak right now to just stand up and go and please announce your name and then please fill out a form.
Hi, I'm William Kinderas. I'm the CFO of Cal Management Golf. Mike Mazzaferri asked me to attend the meeting to just inform him what was going on. Looking at the numbers, being a CPA, I totally understand where you guys are coming from, and as the public, you guys have to understand too. If you're spending $150,000 a year to keep something going, it doesn't necessarily work. And so the best interest in them, they have to hold what's the best interest for them. But also as a numbers guy, we've looked at the revenue numbers, we've looked at the operations, and I am here to tell you that based under our cost structure, we can make the golf course a viable operations. It may take 4 to 5 years for it to be fully back up to what it was, but it's definitely something that we could do and continue to keep it a nice operation for the golfers in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could just sign in really quick with the secretary. All right. Seeing no other public comment at this time, I'm going to close public comment on this issue and bring it back to the board for further discussion on this item and possible action. So at this time, are there any of the board members that would like to speak? Mr. Farahi, you can talk now.
Maybe.
We've taken the leash off.
I would like everybody to know that really the credit for the idea of Washoe County taking over the course was the chairman, Bob Lucey, who's a member of the Washoe County Commission. So the credit doesn't go to me, but goes to him. He brought it up at the Finance Committee, and we want to thank him for taking this to Washoe County board and hopefully getting the rest of the board, 5-member board, to agree to take over this golf course. I would like to make a motion, Mr. Chairman, if we are ready.
I believe, I'd like to make just one comment before you
Okay.
make a motion. Seeing that there's no other comments at this time, and just for everybody that's been in attendance this morning, I first and foremost want to thank everybody for coming and sharing your opinions and comments with us. They are very much well noted, and it's a very difficult thing. Golf is a special place here in Truckee Meadows, and it has been one of the founding reasons for sports and recreation here within our community, and we want to continue to see that thrive within our community, and we have a number of agencies that are doing it. But within the mission of the RSCVA and CVBs around the country, that is not one of those things. Golf is not one of the options that they should be it shouldn't be under the purview of a convention and visitors authority. This is a quality of life issue for all of our citizens. This is a quality of life for people moving into the Reno-Sparks area. This is something that should be under the management of somebody other than our staff. Our staff has currently 5 assets in which they manage. 4 is probably too many as it is. 2 would be the best. But unfortunately, if we could do something to alleviate the stress and bring some financial positivity back to our RSCVA, we're going to look for that. And that is the ultimate goal of this board. You know, and unfortunately, with every decision that is made, there will be some impact on both sides to some degree. It is our intent as a board to minimize that impact to everybody and provide the best direction for the future of everybody within this community. So with that being said, I want to share just a few things in regards to Washoe County. Washoe County does, and this is from a county commission standpoint, Washoe County Commission does oversee the operations. Well, Washoe County owns Sierra Sage Golf Course and Washoe Municipal Golf Course. However, we do not operate or manage either one of those facilities. Those facilities are operated by Sierra Sage is operated by Mr. Mazzaferri and his organization, and Washoe is operated by another organization. We do not participate in the maintenance of Sierra Sage. That is also under the management of Mr. Mazzaferri. The only maintenance that we do is at Washoe Golf Course, and that is performed by county staff, but all other operations of the golf operations is taken care of by the operators. You know, over the years, Washoe County has successfully positioned the 2 golf courses to weather the downturn and adjustment of operational models and reducing costs, and focusing on the product, providing good customer service, and eliminating debt to allow these golf courses to continue. With that in mind, you know, with the lack of debt, that allows these courses to pay for themselves under the current operational structure. Even with the stability of rounds play, continuation of golf as a viable product within it will require a substantial investment of capital for infrastructure unless we determine that the current condition and dated products is acceptable. Our capital investment, which would come from taxpayer dollars, would require a significant investment on behalf of the county to improve the golf course to a standard that would be viable for us to obtain that asset. So with that being said, I would like to look at options that we can address moving forward to maintain Wildcreek Golf for all of the public citizens, but at the same time making sure that this is the right thing for us to do. So that's more of a decision for the county commission and the entities that will control these. But from an RSCVA standpoint, putting my RSCVA hat back on, our mission here is to focus on tourism and visitors to the area, bringing outside people to our community to see what we have to offer. And so with that, I will turn it over back to the board. Thank you.
Just real quick, Mr. Chair. And now, Mr. Fry, I know is going to make a motion, but I just want to make sure in this motion we explore several avenues. One is we keep Sparks whole in all this, and whatever happens. 2 is we explore several avenues. I'm okay with selling the golf course and quite frankly, we don't need to make any money on it, although that would be nice. And 3 is that this RSCVA board is out of the business entirely with no responsibilities. And where I'm coming from is I think it would be better to transfer this over to the county. If it does get reverted back, it stays as a golf course in perpetuity, and then the county can hire on the next entity. So I just bringing that up is just to make sure that we're covering all of our bases.
Yeah. Mr. Farahi.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion that first, we are getting out of the golf business as an organization. Second, based on what Mr. Lawson indicated, too, that I believe we should be looking at turning this golf course back, if possible, to Washoe County, because the Washoe County owns the golf course, owns the land right now, and it is an appropriate body to look at how to manage that golf course, whether they would like to sell it to a golf operator, or they like to make a operating agreement with some other organization to run the golf course, and our staff to explore other opportunities that could maybe brought to the Washoe County, since Washoe County owns the golf course, to make this a win-win situation all around. So that's my motion.
Thank you, Mr. Farahi. Thank you, Mr. Farahi. Just and before I take a second, just for a point of clarification, Mr. Rivers, the title is held by the Washoe County, but funds for the golf course were paid for through RSCVA. Is that correct?
That is correct. The county actually holds title to all RSCVA land currently,
Okay.
but the funds that constructed and have maintained the golf course are RSCVA funds.
For us, as an entity, to turn the golf course back over to the county, would there have to be financial exchange from the county back to the RSCVA to cover that disposition of?
I will defer to Mr. Kennedy, but my understanding is with both entities being governmental bodies that there would be no requirement for funds to transfer.
Correct. That's my understanding as well, based on conversations with legal counsel for the county.
Okay. So there would be no financial implications for the county to take the product back on. Okay. Mr. McGovern, further discussion.
But the county would assume, to tag on to what Mr. Lawson said, the county would assume the liabilities that currently exist in the tune of about 1.8 million with the city of Sparks.
Correct, yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. All right, I have a motion on the floor. Mr. Carasali, further discussion? I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item? Is staff pretty, Mr. Mavrides?
Are we stipulating if it goes back to the county that it stays as a golf course?
I think that was, I looked at council.
Yeah, I think that was the intent of the motion, and I think really what the motion is directing us to approach the county with this, and it's ultimately going to be the county's decision how that's handled.
Okay. Any further discussion? I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimously. All right, we're going to take a short recess really quick and let everybody clear the room. So we're going to take a 5-minute recess.
Yeah, let's change that.
Morning. Don't quit the game yet. We got a chance. I better go home. Yeah, I'm going to talk to Mike real quick. See you guys.
Sorry, I'm like reading from a distance. No, I don't think so. I actually have to look at the agenda. I know that it was going back and forth for the last minute, so we can just get to well, I'll sit tight then. How are you?
All right, I'm going to bring the meeting back to order. We are back in session for the RSCVA Board of Directors meeting. So, everybody sit down. Let's get going. All right. I am going to, at this time, turn it over to my vice chair, Mr. McGovern.
At this time, I'd like to recommend that under Finance Committee number 2, under Marketing and Sales Committees number 2, 3, and 4, that the committee reports, or that the staff reports be accepted.
So you would like to
in block?
You want to put that into a block vote?
Yes.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. I'm going to read through these really quick for the record. Item number 2 from the Finance Committee is a public hearing and adoption on certain clarifications, revisions to the RSCVA's transient lodging tax and surcharge regulations. The Finance Committee has recommended to the Board of Directors approval of proposed revisions to the RSCVA transient lodging tax and surcharge regulations. The Director of Finance will be making a presentation to review and clarify the changes to the existing rules and regulations. Under Sales and Marketing Division, on item number 2, Convention and Tourism Sales Reports. The Convention Sales Department is requesting the Board of Directors review and approve the Convention Sales Report for January 2016 and review and approve the Tourism Sales Report for December 2015. Item number 3 is Marketing Reports. The Marketing Department is requesting the Board of Directors review and approve the Marketing Report for December 2015. And number 4, under the Finance Division, review voluntary transient lodging tax agreement with Airbnb. The Finance Department is requesting the Board of Directors review and approve the voluntary collection agreement between the RSCVA and Airbnb, whereby Airbnb will collect, remit transient lodging tax on vacation rentals booked through the Airbnb platform. I have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimously. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Moving through this, we are now on to agenda item 3 for Finance Committee, fiscal year 2015-2016 budget surplus. Mr. Rivers.
Thank you. You have before you today a staff report relating to the surplus for the current fiscal year, FY 15-16. At this point, we're anticipating ending the year with a $1.8 million surplus. These do not include the surcharge funds. Those are set aside. These are core RSCVA budget dollars. And you have a staff report that includes how we anticipate, or how we would request to utilize those funds. And at a high level, we are recommending $230,000 go through the convention sales department for 4 projects, marketing spend of $500,000, and facility capital of $1 million to come up to $1.73 million in total spend. And in the effort of time, staff would be happy to answer any questions, but John's got 4 items on here, 3 of which come up in the next staff report that's on there. The marketing spend is related to when we did our original budget, we anticipated the surcharge dollars being available to use for calendar 16, so we expended our dollars for the first half of our fiscal year, so this would be spending for the back half of our fiscal year. And in facility capital, the current spend is broken out, $200,000 anticipated to go to the Livestock Event Center and $800,000 to go to the Convention Center for 4 projects at the Convention Center. With that, we'd be happy to answer any questions, go into additional detail if necessary, but would turn it over to the board for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rivers. Mr. Carasali. Nah. Mr. Carasali, can you Mr. Carasali? Nah.
I don't know. I didn't ask.
We want to hear you. I want to hear you.
I have a question on the $200,000 spend for improvements related to retaining snaffle bit futurity. So the question is, I understand that the room nights booked around 1,800 room nights in that neighborhood.
Those for the.
Wait a minute, 1,800 room nights, and so we're spending an additional $200,000 to maintain 1,800 room nights, which, from the standpoint of taxable revenue, is pretty low. So, in my opinion, without further explanation, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yes, sir, and I will. I apologize. We did include the additional information from the convention center. What Brian is passing out to you right now is a map of the Livestock Event Center. For clarification, it's the Snafflebit Futurity which is driving the decision, but there are other groups, Reno Rodeo, American Cowboys Team Roving Association, which are coming up. Well, Rodeo, their contract is not, but ACTRA is. In a nutshell, what we are looking to do is we need to be able to accommodate portable stalls better at the Livestock Event Center. If you will look on the map, in areas that are marked B and D are areas that would be additional barns that would be covered and set up with plumbing and utilities to accommodate temporary stalls. We also need to provide better exercise space, which you will see is number C, or letter C. And those would be the three priorities. We're actually, the reason that there's not more definition at this time, we're actually meeting with our architect in the Reno Rodeo today at 2:30 to get a better handle on the actual cost associated with each individual product or project, excuse me. I tend to believe within the budget dollars that we have and that will be made available to us in the future, the priority would fall on letter B and D. So it's not simply Snafflebit Futurity. And the 1,800 room nights from Snafflebit Futurity are just the rooms that are booked through the block. There's, far in excess of that, but we only take credit for the ones that are booked through the block, the 1,800.
How can you verify the balance that aren't booked through the block?
Well, just the fact,
Outside of you telling me there's more booked, I don't see any information that shows me anything, but that's just another story. But I understand what you said, and I understand the reasons why, and I also would like to make one more comment is, why didn't you say that in the first place, that this is more than for the snaffle? Because then it would have saved me saying anything.
Yes, sir, you're right, that was my error. We should have, the Snafflebit Futurity, we're in the process of bidding their show. It's 2017, 18, and 19, and these improvements are being driven by the demands of their, not demands, but the request of their organization. But there are other groups that will benefit from the improvements to this facility.
Thank you.
Mr. Farahi.
Would you first explain the $2 that is being raised downtown? Does this facility is encompassed in that $2 that's being raised in downtown that is being only invested in downtown facilities?
No, so the $2 from the downtown facilities, the way that legislation is written, not only on those facilities, but any facilities within a mile of downtown Reno, which includes the Livestock Event Center.
That's what I just asked.
Yes,
so
sir.
That includes Livestock Event Center.
Yes, sir. And over the past 3 years, out of that fund, they have contributed close to $700,000 to the Livestock Event Center. What we have done, and their committee and subsequently the Reno City Council, is we have gone to them with specific projects, such as the LED board, the seats.
I understand. Why haven't you gone before them for this $200,000?
Because we have always gone to them with matching projects. So
well, I'm not going to vote for this, and I'm going to tell you this is not how you do it. You can't put some monies aside for some particular area of town and then come to this organization that the rest of us are contributing to the whole budget here and say, now we come and contribute more from here, and we're going to keep our money from downtown, and then we're going to ask more from the rest of you. Well, it doesn't work for me, and I'm not going to vote for it. I think this should go back to the committee downtown, and the money should come out of there to get the job done. After that committee looks at the total picture. If it was me, with that committee, we got to decide where those money should go, where we get the biggest bang for the buck. And of course, I know that's part of our strategic plan, but I'm not going to vote for this.
Thank you, Mr. Farahi. Mr. Mavrides.
And just to clarify, we have about $2.1 million of that $2 downtown fund. The majority of it's spent on the bowling stadium and on the Reno Event Center for projects to improve those facilities, as well as meet the requirements of a long-term contract with the Bowling Congress for the bowling center. So we have spent some money on the Reno Livestock Events Center, but the majority of the funds are committed to those other two facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Mavrides. Any further discussion? All right. Looking for a motion. Let's see.
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that the balance of the $200,000 would come, we would spend where we have, the needs are, but the $200,000 would be taken out of this and would be referred back to the committee for downtown out of that $2 to be, if they decide this is worthwhile to spend on the facility.
So for clarification, you're approving the rest of the expenditures aside from the livestock event center, $200,000 for the snaffle bit, and to have that sent back to the downtown $2 surcharge committee.
That's right.
Okay. I have a motion. Do I have a second? Further discussion, Mr. Mavrides.
And just to further clarify, and hopefully we don't go down a slippery slope here, the downtown properties are contributing an additional $1 to that fund, to the $3 total for downtown, $2 for outlying properties. We want to point out that $800,000 is going for the convention center in this proposal, and $200,000 for the Reno Livestock Event Center. Hopefully we can take a look at this issue in a big picture frame of mind and not start parceling pieces of it out. Thank you.
Ed, did you? No. You didn't? Okay. Mr. Carasali.
I think that Joe Kelly clarified that it's multi-use. In other words, it was going to, this particular 200,000 was going to really be used for multiple purposes, and the livestock event center portion, I mean, the snaffle bit would be one. So based on that, I would agree for the 200,000, but only based on the fact that he said it's a multi-purpose thing. What's being done also for everybody else will benefit the snaffle bit. So,
thank you, Mr. Carasali. I have a. Oh,
I'd like to make a clarification. We asked when you're absolutely right. There's one more $1 that you guys are putting, but the rest of the properties are putting $2 into the general fund. And hopefully this next legislative session, I, as one property, I would hope that we can bring that up to $3, because I don't think it makes that much of a difference, and it was a wrong thing to go to $2. So we have to wait till next year. But we asked when we did this legislation that you guys put the whole money into the general fund, so then this body can make decision for the whole community. And downtown property said, no, we are not going to give you that $2. You can't have it both ways. This is what I'm trying to say. If you had put all of it in the same bucket, then we can divide it among where the needs are.
Thank you, Mr. Farahi. I have a quick comment in regards to this. I have a tendency to agree with Mr. Mavrides and us, Mr. Farahi. This is an important issue, and we've discussed as a board multiple times how important for us is to focus on all of our facilities and move forward to benefit everything. Remember, we've all discussed with the rising tide, all boats float. And being that Washoe County is actually the leaseholder on the county, the Livestock Event Center in the county fairgrounds, and we turn the management over to the RSCVA, I can tell you, we do lose a continual amount of business because of the deterioration of that property. If any one property that we need to focus on most, it would be that property. Now, there are events that we have not focused on in years past, and we have lost a number of events to that Livestock Event Center. For me, $200,000 out of a $1.8 million surplus is well within the limits of making sure that that facility continues to thrive and that we can continue to support the business that we have there. If we do not support this business and we do not move forward, we are going to lose business there, and we are going to find ourselves in another situation where we're going to have to put more money to catch up. And so I support giving the $200,000 to the Livestock Event Center. Mr. Carasali.
One other comment. I think that, and John is also right, maybe it's time for the board to have clarification how that works. I really don't know. I mean, the X amount from downtown goes to the Livestock Event Center, or da-da-da. So if we get it clarified, then we all know what the playing field is, right, Tony?
I think it's the intent of the group, and Mr. Winters is on this committee as well, is to continue looking at projects on all three facilities and maybe other areas too, to improve the market for Reno and the hotels and the casinos that we all benefit from. So I think, you know, we've kicked in a lot of money for that facility, a lot more than we're talking about today. I just want to make sure we keep things in context.
Mr. Chair, I want to say again, because the issue is not whether we should spend the money to do what it needs to be done to keep different events at that facility. That's not the issue. Obviously, we all agree we have to bring all our facilities up to the par. The issue is where should that money come from? That's the only issue. And that's where my difference in my thinking, you can't have the cake and eat it too. If you're going to say, I'm going to keep $2 just for downtown facilities, then put it into the facilities. That's my argument.
Thank you, Mr. Farahi. See any further discussion? Mr. McGovern.
I was just going to suggest that in lieu of no second, will the chair accept another motion?
At this time, in lieu of no second, I'm going to open it up for another motion.
Make a motion that we accept staff's recommendation on the distribution of the $1.8 million spend.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify.
I have a comment.
Discussion?
Maybe, again, the clarification, because I don't understand how that board works versus what we do and they do. It would certainly help going forward that we understand how that money is spent and how it's, you know, what it's allocated to versus what we do, because I'm sure everybody else would like to know. Right. I really don't know.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, we've had a discussion, maybe in the finance committee meeting, about Mr. Chisel coming in from the city of Reno to give an overview of. Yeah. We've been doing this for several years. We go back 3 or 4 years. We've been collecting funds and spending them. So I think there was an idea for him to come in and do an overview to answer your question.
No, I think that'd be a great idea.
Yeah, Mr. Carasali, I was just gonna make the same comment. There was a request to staff to have him come in and give a full presentation to the entire board in regards to the $2 surcharge, how that money is spent, and the direction and how that board operates for the $2 surcharge board. So, if you're okay with that direction and waiting for that presentation, we should have that on a future agenda, hopefully next month. So at this point, I have a motion on the floor and okay.
Can we have with that presentation, can we get the paperwork, the charter, whatever it is that establishes that entity, so we can read it prior to that meeting, please?
Sure. Do you want to wait to the end for that agenda to ask for that agenda, or council?
I mean, I think the directions come from the finance committee to have that presentation, and we'll just include that as the documentation we provide in the run-up to the presentation.
All right, thank you. All right, any further discussion at this point? I have a motion and a second on the floor to recommend the staff's recommendation of the expenditure of $1.8 million as staff approved. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
I have one opposition. Mr. Farahi? Yes.
Or question, in the future, when we get additional funds that we didn't think we had, are we always going to be in a hurry to spend them right away, or are we going to kind of sit on them for a while and then figure out maybe there's a better use than we initially? My son has a great saying, you should let things marinate a little bit, and then they kind of get clearer. The sunlight gets a little clearer. So that's just a comment, not a question.
Thank you, Mr. Carasali. Mr. McGovern.
Now, I can appreciate that comment, but I don't think it's fair to staff. We have no idea how many hours that they've put into the thought process of bringing this to us. I have to believe that based on the conversations I've had with staff, this wasn't a last-minute decision that was put on the agenda at the 23rd hour, that it was well thought out, and it could have been brought earlier. I hear you, and you're right, but I don't think that particular comment is justified for staff.
I'm only talking about the timing.
Well,
the money's not going to rot.
No, but you're making an assumption that this was just thought of yesterday.
No, not at all. I'm making a comment that anytime we get additional funds that we did not anticipate, is there going to be a rush to spend them? That's all.
Okay. Yeah, I think your comment is very much justified, Mr. Carasali, and I would agree with you that it should be brought to the board and give us ample time for us to discuss it with staff and make sure that we're doing the right, making the right expenditures as we move forward, because hopefully we don't under budget and have this kind of surplus in the future, but if it does happen, we'll address it at that time. So, further discussion, Mr. Farahi.
Mr. Chair, we are fixing the roof on the convention center. Do we have an engineer that is reviewing and overlooking that project to make sure the roof is being done correctly? We're spending a ton of money on is there somebody who's going to sign off on it?
Yes, sir. It's a company called Benchmark. They've done our roofs before, do a lot of work for the airport authority, do work for Washoe County School District, and they're on site and
who
monitoring.
is in the organization responsible to make sure all those certificates from manufacturer and the inspectors are signed off before we pay for that roof?
Well, that would be Benchmark's responsibility to provide those to us as part of the.
But okay, if they don't, who on our staff is responsible to make sure they have all those documentation?
Well, ultimately, it would be me, but Frank Yerxa and Joe Walther pretty much head up that particular project for us.
Okay, well, I want to suggest, Mr. Chairman, for you as a managing director, all I have seen from other organizations, finance department does not pay a bill till operations gathers all the information and attaches it to the bill with the warranties before finance is the final check and balance, signs off on it before the check is issued. So I like to suggest that to be considered. So,
Mr. Farahi, I hate to cut you off. We really can't take that action at this time because it's not on this agenda item. So we can recommend it for a further agenda item at this time?
Well,
I'm sorry.
I understand what you're saying. All I'm saying, we need to make sure the job gets done right before we pay the bill.
Absolutely, and we can address that. We just can't discuss that on this agenda item. Okay, so that motion carries you with I can't even count at this point, 7 to 1 vote. Moving on to Marketing and Sales Division, Item 1, Convention Sales Approval and Funding to Leverage 2016 Industry Events to Develop Corporate Markets. Mrs. Cunningham, you're going to take this for us? Or Mr. Leinen?
To Mr. Leinen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to discuss this, and part of that also was rolled up in the discussion on the budget surplus. So, but just so everybody understands what's behind this, for several months now, we've had some conversations amongst staff as well as with our strategic partners about the opportunity to go and develop the corporate market segment. Our destination with all the new economic development that's going on, the new air service that's coming in, we are now more ripe than ever to pursue the corporate market through the RSCVA. We have not prioritized that segment. There's some challenges in pursuing it, but we think this is the right time to do that. We've had several conversations with a number of our hotels, and they too would also like to see an expansion of the corporate market segment. And the hotels strongly support that. And not too long ago, we had a meeting about how to best use that, as well as how to best do that, as well. I've had a number of phone conversations with the directors of sales. Pursuing that corporate market segment, I'm taking a little bit of ahead of the curve from the strategic planning process because we haven't fully vetted out everything, but these opportunities are here now, and if we don't seize them today, we'll take another year and a half to realize them, and I don't think that's in our best interest to delay this effort in going after this corporate segment. Those opportunities are branding at three of the most important industry segments that deal with the corporate segment. Meeting Professionals International is the first one that's on the list. The agenda said requesting of $50,000. That was my error. I meant to adjust that agenda. It asked for $60,000 based on some new learnings and opportunities with that sponsorship. The best part of that segment, that sponsorship, would be owning a meeting through MPI, Meeting Professionals International, that would bring about 40 senior level corporate planners to the destination. And we know that whenever we bring corporate planners here, we have a better, or anytime we bring a planner here, we have a better opportunity to showcase the destination and turn those perceptions around. 20,000 of that 60 is centered around that. Another of that 20,000 is relative to participating in a hosted buyer event. We have not done this in the past with MPI. MPI is an organization that's on the rebound, and I think it's time to jump back in with them. And then the other one is to position, further advance our branding within IMEX, and we'll talk about IMEX in a minute. The second recommendation is...
Mr. Leinen?
Yes.
Not to cut you off, but we just approved that spending for you in the previous agenda item for convention sales, correct?
Yes. That's, yes.
Out of the 1.8 million. So I don't, at this point, I think it's kind of a moot point.
I'm fine with that.
You got your money. Just take the money and run, buddy.
I was questioning why you guys wanted me to go through that again, but I'm fine with that.
We're coming to the realization that we already gave you that money. So, in an effort of time, I'm gonna, as a chairman, I'm gonna remove that item from our agenda, and that will no longer be an issue. So we're pulling item 1 of the convention market and sales. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This moves us to item 2 of the General Government Division. Appointment of RSCVA representative to Sparks Tourism Facility Revitalization and Steering Committee, AB 205. Mr. Kennedy. Oh, yeah. We have public comment. Public comment, Mrs. Brandhorst. No, she's here. She's right over there.
No such luck.
You gotta leave? Okay. Will the record show that Mr. Mavrides is having to depart, please? Thank you, Mr. Mavrides.
Are we on number 2?
We're on, Miss Brandhorst, we are on number 2, yes. The appointment of RSCVA representative.
My name is Kathy Brandhorst, and I'm also the United States President. I just wanted to let you know that the tourists are the ones that are coming into our territory. And they have no money, and they have no gasoline, and they have no, actually nothing to spend money on at all. And the tourists are usually called outsiders. And the outsiders are coming into our city, and they seem to be destroying everybody's life. Like, I'll tell you, for instance, there was a dead dog that was lying on the side of the road, and they kept smashing it because he's with the police department. I also just wanted to tell you, too, that even though you don't really want to hear what's really going on with the department stores, again, I've told you that they still come in with their machine guns because they cannot afford to pay for their clothing, their shoes, and nothing at all.
Ms. Brandhorst, you got to stick to the topic of appointment of a representative to the Sparks Tourism Facility Board.
Yes, I'm talking about the tourists that are coming into our city, and they don't have the money to actually buy or purchase nothing at all. And this is ruining our city here. Because we are from Reno, we do have an income, we have our payroll checks, and we do have a responsibility of paying our rent. The rest of the outsiders that I was talking about, they do not have the money to pay rent. They do not have the money to pay for the water. They do not have the money to even pay for their gas and electric. They're already putting up the poles and wires at the golf course in order to open it up because they have bills to pay. They have not been paid for at all. So I am trying to tell you, you know, most of those people that were here this morning are outsiders. They are not even here because they like golfing.
Thank you, Mrs. Brandhorst. All right. Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In your board materials, you have a letter from Mayor Gino Martini requesting that the RSCVA appoint a representative to the Sparks Tourism Facility and Revitalization Steering Committee to fill the seat vacated by Ms. Carano. The RSCVA has 2 appointments on that committee, one of which is this appointment, must be a member of the Nevada Resort Association who represents properties outside of the city of Sparks. This appointment is open to discussion and voting by the entire board. With that, I'll turn it back to the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. So with that being said, it has to be an NRA member, and it doesn't specifically have to be an NRA member that's been appointed because Mr. Carasali is also an NRA member but is appointed by the airport authority. Is he available to participate in that?
You already sit on that committee through an airport?
No.
Oh, you're saying he's appointed to this?
Here, but he's an NRA member.
Correct. He'd be eligible for this appointment.
Okay. That's what
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I recommend Tony Mavrides for the position.
I got a recommendation for Tony Mavrides. Anybody want to second that recommendation? No. Yeah, I'm not going to recommend Tony. Unfortunately, that's good, Nat. Good job, but no. Mr. Winters, I would recommend that you participate on that board on behalf of the RSCVA. Would that be
Yes, I would
acceptable
agree.
to you?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, well, we have a recommendation and a second.
I do like the idea of throwing Tony under the bus and leaving early, but
Can we tell him we elected him?
Somebody call him on the phone. No, just kidding. All right. This is true. Hey, you're right. You should take on all the responsibilities. All right. I have a recommendation and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? None. Seeing none, carries unanimously. Welcome to Sparks, Mr. Winters. All right. CEO search update. Hello.
Good morning. On the CEO search update, the committee did meet. They amended the RFQ process. That was published, and we received 4 responses. We are now in the position to, and are in the process of, setting a committee meeting to hear presentations from all 4 of those respondents to the RFQ. We anticipate that to be March 30th, but that still is being confirmed with all committee members at this time. I think the point of this, I know it was for possible action, was to determine from the board how many recommendations you want from the committee itself. Do you want to just hear from the actual respondent search firm that the committee finds to be best to have them come present to the full board for vote? Or would you like 2? Again, there are a total of 4. So we're just seeking direction on how many the board would like to see.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Rezek. Mr. Lawson?
Yeah, I think we should just hear from all 4, that we get a good overview of everyone.
Do you want all 4 to come to this board, or do you want all 4 to be?
They're gonna come to the search committee.
Okay. No,
Are you saying what you want for this?
The plan right now is that all 4 are coming to the search committee.
Correct.
After the search committee makes a representation, recommendation.
2 for this board.
You would recommend that the search committee bring forward 2 members to the, okay, so is that a motion? Mr.
That is
Lawson?
a motion.
That is a motion. I have a motion to bring forward 2 respondents from the CEO search firm committee after they have vetted those on March. I would like to just make one quick comment before we have a second there in discussion. I know the CEO search team has done, the subcommittee's done a great job, but I'd like to see us start picking up the pace. March 30th to finalize, and then it has to come back, so then we won't see it as a board until April. And then once we approve, we're not starting work now until May. And so is there any way that we can get them to meet sooner, and so that we can vet them before the end of March?
I will tell you that has been incredibly difficult to schedule. We went through probably 5 or 6 different reiterations of meeting times, both from, primarily, candidly, from vendors and their different travel schedules, together with committee members and their schedules. And it has been probably one of the most difficult things we've had to, and this is the first meeting, there was the desire to have all 4 presentations as well as deliberation done in one meeting, and March 30th was the first available date where we could get everybody on board. I do not have all confirmations from committee members, but I'm hopeful that will occur.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Resnick. And my concern is just that. So March 30th, the CEO subcommittee is going to meet. That won't put it till April for this board to vet those 2 respondents. We approved that whatever contract, hopefully in that April meeting. They don't start work until May. And then we're looking for, in the middle of summer, we're looking for candidates for a CVB CEO position, which is probably in my opinion, now I'm not obviously an expert in this, not the best time to be looking for a CEO.
Why is that?
Summertime, travel time, and tourism business is, but that's my opinion, just from an outsider.
Mr. Chair, may I add that we talked about it at the search committee, Marty, that when they come to make presentation, the person who's going to be doing the search is going to be here so we can talk to that person, because these firms have A team, B team, C team. We want their A team.
Yes, and when we have scheduled that, we have made that clear to all 4 respondents that is exactly who we want to hear from, and that was taken into consideration in that scheduling.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Mr. Lawson? No.
I'm good with.
No, okay, so we still have a motion on the floor for the search committee to bring back after there. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously, with the record being shown that Mrs. Schieve and Mr. Mavrides is not here for that vote. Thank you, Mrs. Resnick. Okay, strategic plan update. Primary market segment opportunities. Mrs. Olson, please. You may, absolutely. Looks like we have Mrs. Olson, Mr. Olson, and
for the record, Erica Olson on strategy. Mr. Chairman, what's the sort of time amount that we have for this item, just so we set the expectations? 5 minutes?
No, you get it.
I don't know.
It's 11:20. It's 11:20. We'd like to, we have some members that have to get out of here by 12 o'clock or 12:15. So the more expeditious you could be, the better.
Okay.
But it is a big deal, so I want to make sure we cover everything.
Okay. So with that in mind, that helps set the frame. What you should have in front of you that was passed out as a non-bindered item is the docs that look like this, 3-hole punched. It's intended to be part of the strategic plan binder as we build it over the next couple of months. So please just note there's some intention behind that. We purposely did not send this out in advance because we wanted the opportunity to orient what's in here, where the data came from, where we're headed, and then for you to have between now and the next board meeting to review the content, come back with questions, clarifications, et cetera, or between now and then too, quite frankly. So, so I know there was a request to have stuff in advance, so the purpose is let's walk through just the high points, and then you've got the opportunity between now and the next board meeting to dig into it. With that in mind, if we could just look at the quick kind of flow between here and how the process is going. If we could jump to the next slide, super. So this was what you saw last time when we presented what the process would be. Obviously, we're in February right now. The intention today is to walk through 3 of the lines of business, looking at the market and the facility analysis side. Again, just the high points. We're not going to do a big data dump. March will be the next group where we're really digging into kind of essentially the other half of the business, if you will, conventions and groups and team sports. And then in April, we'll work through the marketing side of the organization, inclusive of a visitor origination analysis, heading up to a board retreat. So in the vein that Mr. Carasali mentioned earlier, the intention is to build the foundation, so we're not doing a big data dump and then asking for board decisions, but rather getting us all comfortable with what are the brutal facts, what's really going on, what's happening externally, what's happening internally, and then head into a board retreat to make some of the hard decisions. So my expectation today is just to get us a basis of what's happening with these 3 lines of business. And then, and again, I'm not expecting board direction or decisions unless there's anything that you're seeing that you don't think is headed in the right direction. And then the critical decisions at the board retreat, which currently, and that's part of today, we want to talk about it, let's do it now. The suggestion on the table is to have a board retreat at the same time as the June board meeting. So I'll pause on that and see how that sounds to the group.
Thank you, Mrs. Olson. I have just one comment for the entire board. I've obviously been working with Mrs. Cunningham and Mrs. Olson and their teams on this whole project. And I know that we received this stuff today and that we've had discussed about having this stuff in advance. In my opinion, we're getting this a month in advance. This is the information where they're going to go over the high-level stuff today. I would ask all board members to take this back, read it, vet it, and come back next board meeting to give comments in regards to these specific items. In the essence of time today to make sure that we get through this and that we don't cloudy up the water of Mrs. Olson's presentation with too many specific questions or in the weeds questions as you may. So, Mrs. Olson, may you please continue.
Okay. So do we need to discuss the suggestion of the board retreat in June, or should we?
Well, yeah, we can handle that right now. There has been a recommendation to do the board retreat in May, but there has also been one to do one in June. So what would be the disposition of the board to do it at what time? Because I know everyone has busy schedules, and so, Mr. Farahi.
Sure. For me, it would work later in May rather than beginning of May, and June, but the issues are, again, urgency to get this job done, so.
So we have some direction for the end of May, 1st of June. Does that seem to be viable for everybody else? And you're gone the first week of June? Yes. Okay. So, Charlotte, if you will, let's kind of bookend the end of May, first half of June, and find some decent times. Does that work for you, Mrs. Olson, and everybody else I hear at the board? Okay. All right. Does that sound good? And Mrs. Cunningham, is that going to be work? Is that work for you as well?
It certainly will. May we have a concern about the budgeting with all of the public officials, that it may prevent public officials from accessibility for coming to an all-day retreat. Depending on when it falls, but we can reach out and talk to everyone.
For us, we should have most of our stuff.
The state legislature changed it so we can have it at one of our regular meetings, so we don't have to have a special budget meeting any longer.
Right.
So it will be handled by all three entities at their regular scheduled meetings.
So it shouldn't pose any conflict for,
Well, we can meet that time frame.
okay.
So we'll just kind of survey the board members and make sure we find a date that
Thank you for,
everyone is
thank you for
available.
that concern, I appreciate that. All right, all right, Mrs.
All right.
Olson, you're up.
So with that in mind, let's continue into today. What we'd like to walk through, the first agenda, or the first item is to just clarify or confirm the core purpose of the organization. I know that's a really big thought process. We will not take a bunch of time with that. It'll be pretty straightforward. So, and then spend a little bit of time, just again, high level, going through the 3 lines of business: concerts and events, equestrian and livestock, and bowling. That's what we have in front of us today. As a way of reference, and I just want to put this out there, is obviously there's been an inordinate amount of work coming into today, pre-us as well. What we have in front of us is directionally correct. So I would expect over the next 3 months to continue to refine and solidify, but it is directionally correct. So moving on, then let's jump into the first topic. So the reason I wanted to put this out there, and this is a really important point for the board to clarify, but it also is a perfect topic for a retreat as well. So I'll put out a suggestion and then see where it goes with the board. So obviously the core purpose of the organization is to attract overnight visitors. This is the current mission statement. I'm not interested in wordsmithing the mission statement. I'm interested in the intent to help drive decision making as we're putting the strategic plan together. So the purpose of the organization at the very outset, of course, is to attract overnight visitors with the purpose of course, enhancing the economic benefit and quality of life in Northern Nevada. That's what the mission statement says. That's why we're all here, according to the way it's articulated in that particular paragraph. In addition to that, if we could just jump to the next bit, is part of what's happening, and we're well aware of this, is there's more going on than just overnight visitors. We also have to run efficient operations, and we're also funding and investing in overall visitor growth, which is a little overlapping with overnight visitors. The reason I share that with you is because when we look at the plan, we look at the analysis, we look at the market, we're not just looking at overnight visitors, but we're also looking at the operations and the overall visitors in general. And so my suggestion to the board is we're building the plan with this assumption, and if our assumptions are wrong or there's anything else that the board thinks should be sort of framing up our core purpose, it would be useful to let us know now. Otherwise, we're moving forward under the intent that this is pretty much the current way the organization is focused and where it's focused. Should we choose to change that, that would be a great topic to discuss at the retreat, and it might be more data-based once we put all of the analysis together. So I'll pause for a minute. My intention's not to open this up for a massive conversation. I'm just looking for a little bit of guidance to say the current planning team is operating under the assumption that this is why we're here, and all of our work is targeted at achieving those items.
Any discussion? Everybody happy with that direction? Okay.
Okay, super. Moving on then. Moving into the line of business discussion. So I want to just orient ourselves to what's in all of the information that you're going to see from us. So we have gone through the entire CSNL report, which once we have the final edited doc back from them, we will be providing those in pieces as well. What's important about what you asked is we synthesize the work into an executive level key takeaways based on reams and reams of data. So not only from John Kotz, but also from all of the RSCVA event and facility databases from the group, from the Mint and CBIS databases. And then we also just use a third-party general global industry market research just to pull in a few points to have the macro level data. But the bulk of the information is definitely from Mr. Kotz, as well as the RSCVA databases, and then also the Mint and CBIS databases. So that's the data that you have in here. Of course, part of this is the recommendations and the expertise, not only from Mr. Kotz, but also from staff as well, as we're pulling all the information together in our work. And our work as well. Yep. So, Any questions about the data sources? Okay, so moving on then. You saw this slide last time that we were here, and I don't have the clicker, so I apologize. Just kind of looking through the way the whole plan is coming together is obviously, if you notice, this document starts at page 37. So prior to this, there's of course going to be the roll-up of the corporate plan where we'll pull all the opportunities together, all the investments, all the whole summary, and then detailed, of course, are the line of business plans that we looked at last time. So what we have in here today, as mentioned, is bowling, concerts and events, livestock, and equestrian. And when we say line of business, and I'm just going to pause on this for a minute, there's the market perspective, and then of course there's the facility perspective. And it's not that straightforward, right? So there's a lot of markets that we're targeting that book into multiple facilities. Some facilities are single use, some aren't. I mean, we know all of that is just part of being at this table and governing this board. So please note that when we look at this, the first three chunks of this document are the perspective of the market. And you were asking that really strongly in the context of where are the opportunities, where are the growth potentials, what do we need to grow. Separately from that is a perspective of the facility. How's the facility operating? What are the KPIs around that facility? Who's booking into that facility? What are the CapEx requirements for improvements, et cetera? So they obviously go together, but they're also separate. So please note, and we have to do this as well, be mindful of when it says line of business on here, it's a market perspective. When it says facility, it's obviously a facility perspective. Questions about that?
Erica, why just these 7 lines of business? How did you come up with just the 7 lines?
That is
Richard Wells we had conversations with Mr. Wells and staff and on strategy and decided that these were our key focus areas, lines of business that we were in.
Yeah, at the same time we talked that this is the business we are in today. But one of the key part of this study is to say what we should be in, what we should be getting out, and why. So I don't want to be locked in because we have these facilities, any one of them, that's the business that we have to be looking to grow or develop in future. One of the key issues is where the trends in tourism and convention business is, where should we put it? Maybe we need to convert 1 or 2 of these facilities to something else.
If I may, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so actually, and that's a really important point because if we start the planning process from a facility perspective, we're stuck in that thought process, right? So that's why when you look at what you have here, we started it with the market perspective. So, and we happen to have assets that we sell to deliver on that. That just happens to be the case. But what you'll see, and it's only part of it, right? But what you'll see is what are the opportunities and where is the landscape in these 3 market potentials? And then we can decide what we want to do from a facility perspective. Is that fair?
I understand what you're saying, Erica, but I want to make sure that at the end of the day, in your report, it justifies these facilities' existence and why no changes to something else.
Yeah, agreed. And you won't see that today because we only have part of the picture. So today is just a piece of the picture, and it's going to feel fragmented. We very specifically said what's happening with concerts and events, what's happening with bowling, what's happening with equestrian, and then over the next couple of months, we need to zoom out and see the whole thing together, and then we can have the more robust conversation about what needs to change. Okay.
Would we be able to get a cost revenue analysis for each of the different segments?
Yes, that's in that forecast, right?
What we have included currently is on the facility side. So that portion is included in what you have in front of you today, I believe, correct?
So there's a breakdown on the rent that's being brought in and the costs that are involved for each facility?
Yes.
Okay,
What's
I
not
didn't
in
see that.
here today is the forecast for that, because we're not done with all of the assumptions yet.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, all right, so moving along then, we're gonna jump into, let's jump into concerts and events. And what I did just up on the slides is, I pulled out the high points from the detail that's in this doc. So I'm not necessarily gonna go through the doc, I wanna orient us on a couple of things that are worth pulling out. So for concerts and events, it represents 7% of the total room nights, over the past 5 years. So what we tried to do to just make some sense of the information, because there's just tons of data, is when we're talking about things in sort of 5-year blocks, unless it's otherwise expressly noted. So over the past 5 years, the total room nights, again, room nights being the penultimate purpose, as stated earlier, comprises 7% of the total business, if you want to call it that way. The other lines of business are up there as well. You can see that. We'll touch on those items.
So it's 7% of these different segments, not necessarily 7% of all the room nights that are generated in the region.
It's right. That's correct. It's 7% of the room nights that the RSCVA is responsible for and/or influences that is tracked within this organization.
Where do you get that data?
Pardon?
Where do you get this data? How do you know it's 7%?
It's, yeah.
No, this is the facilities database that was used. I'll defer to Howard.
Yep.
So this is a roll-up of what we have, and data information is maintained in many different databases, and we cooperated with Brian. So this is a roll-up from facilities as well as from what we've got out of the Mint. Not out of them, excuse me, out of John's production database. So this is what has been produced, consumed over the last 5 years, so we get a picture of what was.
I appreciate it, but that's not good enough for me. I need to understand how you came up, where do you come up with that number? What data?
Okay, so.
Garbage in, garbage out, as they say. I
Okay.
wonder how did we come up with each one of these numbers?
Starting with bowling, vast majority of bowling is handled in the NBS, in the National Bowling Stadium. They have a database which they keep track of, who knows, anywhere from 80, 100 events each year, where they come from, estimated room nights, attendance, and so forth. So we've got that by year, and then bowling, there happened been a couple years where the bowling was out at the convention center as well. So we pulled that together into that number, 587,000, okay? The sports information came from some out of the production database, John Linus production base. Some of it came out of the actual consumption at the convention authority. So it was what is in their database we pulled together. So that's what we do with all
Has
of them.
somebody verified these numbers independently?
They are.
Where?
They should be our third-party independent verification, Mr. Fry, in my opinion.
Who is the third party?
Mr. Howard is doing that.
No, he said he just got the numbers. I want to know how we can rely that those numbers are accurate or not.
So we went through line by line through every single entry and record in those respective facility databases and also the convention.
Yeah, some of this, when you look at, between what's being reported when bookings are term definite, is most of that reporting comes from what the hotels provide in terms of that room block. So that's the first step, is the hotels have to verify what they turn definite and what comes through. There is a disconnect on that consumption element because we don't always get full reporting. So some of this reporting is what the hotels committed at on the convention and meeting side, what actualized, some of that we get, some of that we don't get. But most of the verification is based on either the end user telling us what their performance was and utilization of that, and or what the hotels are providing. But it is data that is pulled from EBMS, and it's data that we're tracking.
So
I like to ask that the assumptions be put in there, how we came up with those numbers. Where is the sources of that information? and whether it has been verified or is a number we're just taking. I'm very sensitive from our own operation. I understand people give me numbers. When we dig into it, we find out it may be much different than what initially was given out. So again, if we make a wrong assumption, we're going to come to a wrong conclusion. So if you could put down who is giving you the numbers, based on what, I would appreciate it.
So that's a good segue. So what we will do also is publish the links to the raw files, of which in all of those is a full documentation of where it came from, how it was provided, all of that is exactly as you expected. More important to that, though, is for those folks that might want to dig in deeper. We just spoke with Mr. Winters about that. Then the pivot tables and all of that are available to slice and dice this every which way that we want to. So we will get that to the board, but more importantly, we'll make sure all those assumptions are spelled out. We'll make sure it's part of the appendix on this as well.
In one point with Mr. Farahi, we have taken that step and try to verify. So what we did with the bowling, for example, we went to the USBC site, and where they said they had the number of registered teams that came here or whatever city they went to, and we readjusted the numbers that we had self-reported, actually readjusted them down, and worked with Mr. Rivers based upon a third party at that point. At this point, that's the only third party that we have, but I understand your point, and is very well taken, and we will work on those other areas as well.
And just to add on to Mr. Farahi's, from data collection, I think a point of direction we'd like to give to you and staff going forward is that we have some sort of consistent data collection, some sort of a system in which we know that the data that we're retrieving is consistent amongst all of our providers and all of our properties. So maybe developing a system, so that's something to look forward to in our strategic retreat.
I want to say, I'm glad Mr. Winters is on this board. He's an analyst. Right? You know what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You can probably contribute more, telling us how we can help to make sure that we're relying on right numbers, right assumptions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that's why I was talking to Erica earlier about being able to see the stuff and try and understand it. And as we think about all the rooms that we have here in market, when they do the National Bowling Stadium, they usually ask the participant, where are you staying at? And then that's the way that we get tracked to say and keep all those room nights. But what may not be tracked there is the 2 or 3 other rooms that are attached to it because family, friends, and whatever else that comes onto it. So I wouldn't be surprised if these numbers are even understated in some of these metrics. And then at the same time, when we're looking at conventions and meetings, I assume that we're talking more about the convention center itself. Now we're talking all convention meetings throughout the entire thing?
That's correct.
Good.
So that's a really important, if I could add to your point,
Good.
That's a really important point when we look at this and what we're saying, and this is the ask to not just be facility focused, but to be market focused. This is the market segment. That is facility agnostic,
Yeah. Then the other thing, my first question was this is the percent of just this piece of the pie. Okay, so that's the pie of all the stuff that RSCVA is over, but also understanding what this is out of the entire pie of the region, so we can have all of our occupied room nights across the entire piece. So when we're looking at some of these things and we're putting X against equestrian or X against the convention and meeting business, and if it really is like this 0.1% of all room nights, then we might think differently about how we try and spend some of the funds against these things. So maybe there's a big bucket of all other occupied room nights that are just through these 5 or 6 entities.
To that point, just for context, we run about 3.3 million cash occupied room nights per fiscal year. So this is over a 5-year span, I believe.
Yes.
So
the tricky part is you say cash, right? So there's a chunk in each of those segments where some of them are comp too. So I think we'd want to say, here's the rest of cash, here's the rest of comp, and whatever else to get that full market picture.
Mr. Carasali.
I don't understand the comp, because in other words, the RSCVA only makes money on the cash. I understand it brings more visitors, and you can extrapolate out of that they're gonna use money for food and beverage and et cetera, but it really doesn't help making any decisions as far as the RSCVA is concerned, other than if you're getting too many comps, you're getting less cash and we're getting less money. Just my opinion.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look at what's the whole pie, You know, so we got the 3 million in cash, we probably have another X million in comp, whatever.
Yeah,
There's a
we
whole
absolutely have
pie.
both of those numbers. We could provide it, so you could do it against cash or cash and comp, just depending on the metric you wanted to use.
But, Mr. Rivers, can we do that for the whole pie? We just have the RSCVA,
We get all of the room tax returns for the entire county, so we know cash for the entire area as well as comp for the entire area. So we've got the total population of room nights.
okay, good, that's good perspective, okay. Okay, this is why we wanted to talk about this, just to get ourselves aligned and understanding what's in here. Flipping then to the next bit, if you wouldn't mind, please. So if we want to flip to, in your handout, if you would like, page 41, which happens to be 6 pages in. Again, I just want to orient us on what we're looking at. So if we're breaking down that 7% pie, here's how it breaks down. So again, with this in concerts and events, we've got the market perspective. The growth rate that is indicated in this document is the market growth rate. This isn't the growth rate of the RSCVA business. This is the market growth rate for concerts and events. Okay, so that's a third-party independent. That's what's happening with concerts and events. When we look at the 7% of the total room nights over the past 5 years, they bucket into these areas. You can see that sort of general concerts and ticketed performances, Hot August nights, which we're still working on getting those room nights identified, general, local, public, spectator, consumer, and then the Reno Bighorns. So when we look at the market that is concerts and events, the business that is under that umbrella, it breaks down to kind of these subsegments, and that gives you an idea just of attendance and events and room nights over the past 5 years. So again, and more detail on page 41, but again, all of the data is structured this way, so it's super consistent, so we start to understand where the business is coming from, how does it actually break down between events, attendance, et cetera. Moving on. Okay, we'll jump then to the next, which is the facility analysis. So again, I'm just pulling out key data points so you understand where they came from. This is putting on that facility perspective. So that market perspective was the one perspective, facility perspective is the other perspective. In the facility section, and this is specific to the Reno Event Center because the majority of the concerts and events are booked in the Reno Event Center, as you would expect, but not all of them, but the majority of them. How is it performing? Our cost per room night is the metric to look at across all the facilities, but you can see how it's fluctuating quite a bit. And then the chart that's a bit hard to read here, but it's easier to read in your document, came from Mr. Kotz's work in the context of how are we performing against other event centers nationwide, comparable event centers, and you can see that the Reno Event Center is in the median of performance from a net loss perspective. Again, pulling out the key points, making sure that we understand. Any questions? Okay, moving along then. The next part is the event analysis. So again, I want to explain where these came from so when you're looking at the data, it makes sense to you. The first chart is answering the question of where do concerts and event business go? What facilities primarily are utilized to deliver on that market. We already said the Reno Event Center, which is REC, but you can see the other stuff up there with the Convention Center and the Livestock Event Center, room nights, total events, total attendance. A different perspective is the facility perspective, which is what segments are utilizing the Reno Event Center, which is the bottom chart. And you can see there, again, concerts and events, sports, and meetings and conventions. So we'd like this to be a little more straightforward than it is, but it's not. So there's the market perspective, there's a facility perspective. We'll be working through both of those across the markets and the facilities.
Then all this information is in the packet that was on our table this morning, is that
Yes,
right?
yep, and there's a lot more. And so I'm just pulling out the high points so you have a chance to read this between now and next month. I just want to clarify the data so that when you read it, we're not more confused, quite frankly. So then I just have one more slide on this, and then we can decide what we want to do. So the last thing we did is, and this is really the most important part, which is, so what's the outlook? So what's the estimation based on the historical performance, the potential future performance against the opportunities that we see, not only from staff perspective, but from an industry expert perspective? What does the business look like? And what investments do we need to make to either grow, maintain, or substantially grow the business? So on the far left-hand side, what's there is if we don't change current operations, if we just continue to maintain as we are now from a sales perspective as well as from a facility perspective, what might the business look like over the next 5 years? So what we see is modest growth for concerts and events. We see somewhat of an improvement over the past 5 years. It was about 93,000 room nights. Over the next 5 years, you see that at the sort of steady state growth of 64,000. Why is that? Because it decreased over the last couple of years were not so great. So if we see modest growth from the last couple of years, we get to about a room night forecast of about that number. That looks like about 24 events per year. And the resource requirements are what we currently have, and the city of Reno is funding the maintenance through their CIP. So central to this question, which Mr. Farahi asked earlier, is where should we grow and why? So again, just looking at this segment, then what was articulated based on the research is there's a handful of opportunities. What does that really look like from a room night perspective, and what does it cost to grow those? So if the big opportunities, you can see them there, are going at risk, as well as a particular subsegment of electronic dance music. The additional room nights that would be forecasted are in the 20,000 range over 5 years. That would look like an additional 15% over 5 years. And if we wanted to take advantage of that, then we would need to figure out what the policy change would be to go at risk, the reserve money to do so, and there's probably some staff requirements with marketing to deliver on that as well. What we need to see coming into the retreat is more specific dollars assigned to the opportunities. We will be doing that, but this gives you an idea generally how we're pulling this together. If we wanted to substantially grow the segment, we see that it's limited, and we didn't see any major additional opportunities based on not only the third-party research from Mr. Kotz, but also from the staff's perspective and also what's happening in the market. So that's why there's nothing there. So I'm going to stop. So those are the key points I wanted to pull out so you had an understanding of what you had in your packet to review between now and next month. I can go through the high points of the other two lines of business if you'd like me to. They're structured exactly the same way.
Would any of the board members like to see the remainder of the lines of business? Or would you like to vet them first? Okay. Yeah, I think we should let the boards vet these and read that first, and then come back with questions next month.
Great. So then just to put a fine point on it, as I stated, and I put it all together here for you, but page 37 through, sorry, give me a minute. Page 37 through 30, page 37 through 64 is the market perspective. It's all of the background on what's happening with the market segment, where's the growth coming from, the justification around the opportunities, and the room night forecast. Pages 65 and beyond are the 3 facilities that are the primary facilities utilized to deliver on the business.
These 3 lines of business.
These 3 lines of business, sorry. Just these 3 lines of business. We will, of course, be doing the convention center and the rest of basically John Linen's world next month.
So in this, do we also have something where we benchmark, here's Reno, and then here's 6, 7 other cities and what's strong about them, where they perform, as John talks about that future and everything that goes into it. Is that going to be part of this as well?
So we have it at each individual facility level, and then from a market perspective, there's a larger set of benchmarking on marketing spend, tourism sales, that sort of thing. Yes.
The question, Frank, is more, Erica, the question is, for similar facilities, the best in this class, what kind of occupancy they have, so we have something to compare with.
So we have that from Mr. Kotz's work. That's what's in here as far as he could take it.
Okay, we need to clearly indicate that in your study.
Yep.
Where we are, where we should be, how long it should take for us to get there, when the report comes out, final report. So the staff of this organization is held responsible. Year one, in this facility, you need to be here. Year two, now. If not, it's a waste of time. It's going to go on somebody's ship. An actionable plan has to come up with this and comparing ourselves not with the average. Don't please come and tell me where we are doing okay. No, we need to compare ourselves with the best.
If I could.
Sure.
Chelsea, if you could please flip back to the facility slide. So what we will have over the next couple of months is pulling together the key points that help us understand what the facts of the business are. That right there, that chart on the bottom, that is not easy to read on this slide, I apologize, is an example how the Reno Event Center compares to other like event centers that Mr. Kotz identified as the comparable set for facilities. What we need at the board retreat is that if we want to move it one direction or the other, we need the board's direction on, no, we're not okay with that. We expect to see it break even. Okay, got it. Or actually, no, we're okay being in the middle, and that's okay as well. So based on that, we'll know which opportunities to go pursue to drive the business.
Yeah, but with all due respect, the board is not expert in what are the opportunities out there and what the possibilities are. That's your job and John Clark's job to come and say, this is the possibility.
Yep.
So it needs that, first of all, whether we should be in that business, and if we are in that business, what is the potential of that business, and how long it should take you to get to where you need to be.
Yes, so, I mean, correct. So we will have all of that pulled together, and it's the board's decision, though, where the priorities need to be, once we've laid all of that out.
I agree, as long as you have all the information that the board can make it,
Yep.
again, a solid decision.
Yep.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, can I ask one question regarding something that Mr. Carasali asked, because I'm not particularly clear? Like on that pie chart where the bowlers, it showed that they had 587,000 room nights or whatever it was over the last 5 years. When we count bowling room nights, we're counting room nights. We don't know which ones are cash and comp. When you get a report from a hotel, which tells you cash and comp, but it doesn't say bowlers.
So what we have in terms of the population is what the properties file for a monthly total. To Joe's point, if Joe Blow checks into Harrah's, we don't know that they're paying $29, $49, $79 or comp. And I don't know how we would honestly obtain that without the property supplying it to us.
Thank you. I think basically a cash room night is the only room night we should be interested in because that's our only source of revenue. The comp will tell you one or two things. You're over-comping as a market, under-comping, or you're comping at the average level. And any event that brings in 500 comp room nights and you're funding it with hard cash, doesn't make too much sense unless you expect to get a tremendous amount of revenue from ticket sales, incremental events, or incremental spending on food and beverage and whatever. But the heart and lungs of this organization is cash room nights, and we should be, and I want to make a comment about that here, maybe I can make it now, but that's what makes this thing work, okay? And it hasn't been working real well in the past. We got to look forward to make it work, but basically, as an example, if you get caught up in throwing comp room nights, which don't make any sense. For example, in the past, this is special. This is events that we funded. For example, who knows how many comp room nights they had, but we funded ahead of time, and I don't know whether it was vetted by the board or not. International volleyball tournament, and we funded it with cash and so forth and so on. And it was just in the 2016 fiscal that we lost 97,000, we had to pay out 97 as a loss, okay? Then secondly, prior to that, we had the blue jeans, which I don't know who vetted that, but we probably lost 200,000 on that in that neighborhood, correct? But it was really never vetted by the board, or when the board voted for it, they didn't have enough information to really make a decision. And thirdly, we're now looking at the Big Sky, which is now, per the report here, that we're right at negative 214,000 at this point for the Big Sky. And this was, again, was an event that was booked, whether it was the prior CEO or whomever, without, in other words, with a lot of newspaper,
Mr.
You know, and hoopla and et cetera.
Mr.
So,
Carasali, not to interrupt you, I don't want to get into the discussion of specific events about that.
no, just real quick though.
Okay.
So that's a little over 400,000, but it's probably closer to 500,000. What I'm trying to say is, we have to be very careful in how we vet spending or projecting this, or spending money for future events in the future. And maybe there's something you could come up with an idea, whether it should be vetted by the marketing committee, should be vetted as long with the CFO and so forth. That's my whole point.
I agree.
Because that's $500,000 we just blew, and I bet you most of the board members that when heard about this before, or maybe they didn't hear, have no idea that we blew $500,000.
Right, agreed.
That's all.
And I share, I share your concerns as well. And I think this goes back to our data collection and how we're going out to get that data and making sure that that data is brought forward in the proper amount. Because Mr. Carasali has a very poignant statement in the sense that we can't be spending, if we don't know what we're getting the money from, or how we're getting it, or where it's coming from, it's difficult for us to make the right spends going forward. So I think data collection for us going forward from everybody, parties and the properties, and also the conventions and business, as much as we possibly can, so there's some clarification there. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I ask that the Finance Committee, that be brought to the Finance Committee, every event that we are investing in it, before what the board approves, and when the event is done, we want a final analysis, what was the bottom line for every event. Would that be okay, Mr. Chair?
That's fine with me.
Just to clarify, you're asking for any level of commitment then, or you're asking for those that we're going, in this event portion where we're talking about potentially going at risk for concerts, for those that we're actively managing? Because it's very commonplace that we're giving discounts to ABC convention or
I'm talking
sponsoring
about
a lunch.
anything that has a loss for this organization, and we are doing it because we have a reason for, at the end of the day, being in red. We need to have the analysis, how much we're supposed to have, the event should have cost us, and at the end of the event, what was the actual number.
And to that point, that's what we're trying to do with Big Sky, and that's why we've been discussing it, and we'll do a post-analysis. But I hear you, we can do that for other
We
big
need to
ticket
bring that to
items.
the Finance Committee, what I'm asking. All this where we commit monies and resources to events, and this board approves it based on the number that you give us. And after the event, we like to see where we ended up to be.
All I was saying too is that maybe we should look at how we bet, or who does bet, and make sure that everything's there on the table before we can vote, or should vote.
No, agreed.
Or have to vote.
Agreed.
Yeah, because even in our business situations, right, most of us, before we spend any level of capital or major investment, we have to know what the return on investment is, what our assumptions are, and that other stuff. And we all feel good about that decision going forward, and then post forma analysis, how'd it do, so we can learn and go from that spot. Because even, I think Nat brought up earlier, right, when we kind of did that $1.8 million approval, probably could have been a little more.
I agree with you, Mr. Reynolds, and I don't want to get carried away on this, because this is good conversation. However, this is conversation for us to carry forward at the strategic plan retreat. So I want to make sure that these notes are subsequently put into this data as we go forward. But right now, I want to stay on track with the idea of that, where the line of business, and if we don't feel that there's certain aspects or data that is missing from the line of business, that we can proceed forward and get that line of business so that it can make a clearer picture for all board members involved. whether that's data collection, what data isn't there, what should be there, but I want to make sure we save these kind of conversations for the board retreat, because I want to vet them in more detail with more time. Okay? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to make sure everybody realized we don't have per line of business segment we don't know the difference in cash and comp.
And I understand that, and so, and I appreciate that, Mr. Kelly, so we will vet that when we get there, and that's why I say, per line of business, how are we going to collect the data? Where is that data coming from? What is that data even pertinent? And how does it play within our further moving forward? Based upon Mr. Winters, what his established, what are our assumptions? What's our ROI? Where are we going? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just to wrap up then?
Sure.
So, putting a fine point on this, this is intended to be the key components to help us make the decisions going forward. What would be fabulous is between now and the next board meeting or in the interim, as the chairman has mentioned, if there's other pieces that you want to see that you don't see here, knowing full well that we absolutely need to make some pretty serious decisions at said retreat, please let us know. Everything is going to be structured exactly like this, so now would be the time. I think the appropriate thing would be that questions go to Ms. Cunningham, and we will also be providing the base level data per Mr. Winters' request, so we will absolutely get that out to the board.
Thank you, Mrs. Olson.
Thank you.
All right. Any further questions from the board in regards to this item? Mr. Carasali?
Eric, I think you're on the right track. We're going to see some great results, I think.
And Mrs. Olson, I want to commend your team. I think that you guys have done, in a short amount of time, a phenomenal job with what you've been done. So thank you, and also to our executive team for stepping up to the plate. I know you guys have put a number of hours in, so thank you for being flexible and dynamic as we move through this process, because it's important. We all want to get this done quickly, so thank you. All right. That was for possible action, but we don't really need to take action on that. I think there was enough direction given to staff. All right. On to item number 4, role of a consultant in development and implementation of strategic plan. Mrs. Cunningham,
Would you like
please.
me to take that over? I just quickly provided you, this has to do with Richard Wells serving as an advisor on strategy moving forward. What is our relationship? I give you a little bit of history. In July of 2014, he was retained by the RSCVA for an amount not to exceed $60,000 to be a consultant to help us establish a scope of work, to hire a firm to do the strategic plan for this organization. In October of 2015, the $60,000 not to exceed amount was hit. And since then, at that meeting, you may recall that Richard Wells agreed to continue his work with this project for no compensation at all. However, in early February, he had a discussion with Mr. Farahi, and the outcome of that was that we should bring it back to the board and discuss compensating Mr. Wells or further defining what is his role at this point. With that, staff is seeking direction from board as to those questions. Thank you.
At this time, we'll take direction from, we're losing members fast, so. Discussion, we're gonna open this up for discussion at this time. Mr. Lawson.
Well, I think you all know I've been pretty critical of this, and to have a consultant to a consultant to a consultant, I think we're overkill here. I'm not in favor of extending Mr. Wells' contract at all. And I'll listen to other discussion and see if you can change my mind, but I haven't seen the performance.
Mr. Farahi.
And I understand, Mr. Lawson, your concerns, but we should ask the team whether he has brought value. And my concern is the reason I'm suggesting that we keep him on. He started with the process, he stays with the process till it is done. this is my concern. We do not stay with something, with a plan till it is finished. We have spent a good amount of monies, and it's not going to take much. I don't know what he's asking for, but I'm suggesting he stays on, and maybe we can ask Ms. Olson whether Richard has been helpful and whether he would be of help to stay with this project till it is completed.
So can we bring Ms. Olson up then?
Yeah, Mrs. Olson, if you may, if you will.
So from the time that we've been working with this project and with Mr. Wells, he has been helpful. He does bring the perspective. I understand Mr. Lawson's concern, and I don't have the perspective on the kind of the overall budget, so I'm going to plead the fifth on that. But as it relates to his advisory and reviewing the content, that has been helpful. And if I were to make a recommendation, I would say his reviewer capacity will yield to a result that I think the board will be happy with. And that's much smaller of a role than he has been playing heretofore. But he has reviewed the material coming into, he reviewed the material coming into today, and he was helpful in that capacity. So
What do you see his role as going forward to help you?
So I think that the staff and myself and our team would find his usefulness as reviewing the material before it comes to the board. Not as
someone else that could do that?
Well,
I think his experience with strategic plans and data analysis proves to be helpful in that facet. I'm not certain about the money. He had indicated to me he had a conversation regarding $5,000 a month. So I believe that's the amount of money we're talking about.
Yeah, the discussion that I've had with Mr. Wells is that he had expressed that $5,000 a month would be a reasonable number for him to help, for him to put the time and carry on with the process. I can't justify paying Mr. Wells $5,000 a month on this process. I have to agree with Mr. Lawson that Mr. Wells played an integral role at the beginning in finding us, Mr. Katz and CSNL, to provide us the data. Mr. Wells has been a wealth of information in regards to vetting and the data as we move forward. But from the presentation I just saw from Mrs. Olson and her team, I think using Mr. Wells as an advisor in an advisory capacity is not where we need to be. Now, with that being said, using Mr. Wells to review the data, the final data, I see no problem with it because I think he has been with the process the entire time. Is that justifiable for $5,000 a month? In my opinion, no. Is that a one-time deal at the very end of the process prior to the board retreat? I think that's probably realistic. So is there a one-time set fee that we could pay him to vet the entire proposal? And truly just as from an advisor to Erica prior to bringing us a final product, I think that would be the more reasonable understanding for his operation, but I can't justify paying him $5,000 a month or keeping him on in a full-time capacity.
I want to ask Erica again, in the time you've worked with Mr. Wells, how much has he changed what you've done with your strategic plan?
I would say that what he's been most so Mr. Wells did an inordinate amount of work with...
Speak plain to me.
Yeah. Mr. Wells did an inordinate amount of work to get us to where we are today. So I just want to really acknowledge that, and I think it's really important.
We're not trying to have you throw him under the bus or anything.
Right.
I just wanted to know a simple question as an advisor and as a collaborator and what you've done so far. How much does his work contribute to what I just saw?
His work helped with the finality of the fidelity of the data coming into today. And there is this underlying mistrust in this organization related to the data. and he helps alleviate that problem. And that's the answer.
I don't think you get much clearer than that.
Analogy to the fidelity. Of, I'm gonna have to.
That's what I was gonna say.
You know, I went to Colorado State, so is that yes or no? Is he helping, or is he just advising?
The board doesn't trust staff's numbers, and to Mr. Farahi's question, having Mr. Wells involved provides that fidelity.
That fidelity, that third-party reviewer, that conversation we had earlier. I'm concerned about the fact that the board's going to continue to question the data that we're coming forward with, and with Mr. Wells in a reviewer status, it stops that cycle.
You see where my question comes forth, and he was hired to develop a strategic plan to suggest someone to do that. We did not get that. He worked with that consultant for months and months and months. We still didn't get that, and now we've hired you, or I think we've hired you.
We hired.
And we're spending again another $160,000 based on Mr. Wells' recommendations. So if you're going to talk about credibility and numbers, I don't have a lot of faith in what he's done for us, just to be as flat out honest as I can be.
When one looks at the meat and potatoes that you put up on there, the numbers, the real numbers that we looked at today, without Mr. Wells' assistance, would any of those numbers have changed? I see a no.
I guess the answer is no.
Okay.
And here, as your chairman, I think it's one of my duties is try to, and I expressed this a long time ago, is to try to unify not only the board, but with the executive team, and now with the team that is presenting us a strategic plan. Mr. Wells does provide us with a lot of experience and understanding of the market segments. However, I don't think he's the end-all be-all, and when it comes to he's not the pope of CVB business. And so it is the job of this board to independently vet this information. I know I'm looking at, or was looking at, people running, five people running properties within our region that have a clear understanding of how tourism works within their properties. I see individuals on this board that have an understanding. So there should be a reason for us to vet it and you to just bring it forward. I think you have the skill set based upon the information that Mr. Wells has given you to this point. I don't think that Mr. Wells needs to be continually involved in this process going forward. I think he's given you the direction and you have a clear understanding. I think we add too many cooks to the kitchen. We're going to find ourselves continuously going down a process that will be never ending. I would like to see an end process. I appreciate Mr. Wells' participation. I think he's done a good job up to today, but I don't see his relevance moving forward. I honestly don't see that.
Mr. Chair, I don't know whether you're still recommending that he checks the final report. To me, that's waste of time. By then, it's too long. If he's going to be helpful at all, it's going to be now, as the plan is being developed, and he can review and give his comments on that. And frankly, we run a tight ship at work. I do not like to spend money for sake of spending it. It has to make sense. And to me, he has started with the process. I understand some of the comments, but really, you have to know that John Cutts just did a market analysis. He was not able to put it in a strategic action form that your organization is putting it. So without John Cutts, I don't think you would have been able to do the job the way you're doing it. Is that true or not? That market research.
Well, we've taken John Cutts' research and we've done quite a bit more, but I would say that, well, we have it, the organization's paid for it, it's good, we're using it. I mean, that's the answer. It's not good enough, but it fills in some blanks that we absolutely need, so sure. Yeah. But that's water under the bridge. You paid for it, you did it, so we're using it, you know?
Yeah, no, because the debate is whether John Cott's, what he did was valuable or not. To me, without his study, because he's an expert in tourism and marketing, an organization like yours will not be able to put a package together that we're going to be getting at the end of the day because of what he's done.
Mr. Fry, I would disagree with you. I wouldn't disagree that his destination market analysis wasn't phenomenal. He did a good job bringing forward the destination market analysis. Where he fell short was the strategic plan. And, but Richard Wells was the one we hired to vet. He was the one to bring us forward somebody who could do both, and he brought us CNS. So in one breath, he did do well, and the other, so if you had an employee that came in and said 50% of the time they did okay, how long would they work for you and your property? And so I can't, and I appreciate where you're coming from, and he did a good job with bringing someone forward for the destination market analysis. However, he didn't do very good in regards to finding somebody to do a strategic plan. So when it comes to a strategic plan and a firm that does strategic plan, is Richard qualified? Is that within his skill set? Or is Richard better suited at looking at the data and understanding the data that they're bringing forward? And I think he's done that with John Kotz and the data that they've brought forward, saying, this is the data we have, this is the data we need, and so far we've gotten the data we need. Howard from their team has been able to be very effective in bringing forward the data that we didn't have. So in my opinion, he has done his job and effectively done his job, but now it's time for him to relinquish, because that doesn't seem to be his skill set, and give it back over to On Strategy for them to finish the strategic plan. And I know that they've heard all of our concerns. They have had individual interviews with all of us addressing each one of our issues going forward. So and I'm not trying to railroad anybody, but that is just my opinion where we're going.
What is your opinion of the necessity going forward of continuing the relationship? In other words, can you do your job adequately and well without the relationship as it stands right now?
So he has been helpful in the conversation to review the information coming into today. It hasn't been a hindrance, it has been a help. Did anything change drastically from it? No. Back to the comment that I made earlier, because of the mistrust in the organization around the data, what that does help is he's another set of eyes that provides some comfort to this board, that it's our eyes, it's the staff's eyes, and it's Mr. Wells's eyes. And those are three different organizations looking and validating the data and the assumptions. And if that gets us down this path faster because of that, then that's very helpful for the overall process. What I can't speak to is if the board is going to be comfortable. So at some point we've got to be comfortable with, we're good with what we're looking at. And if that comfort comes from us and the staff, great. If we need to add Richard into the mix because of the perspective that you all have seen him provide or not provide coming into today, fine. But that would be my counsel back to the board, is that we don't get to a board retreat and we keep just digging at this issue of we don't trust the data, is it good enough? And Richard's been helpful, as stated, to help be that kind of yet another person so we have a better sense of comfort. That's.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Lawson.
There no further discussion. I'll make a motion.
Yes, go ahead, please.
I move to not continue Mr. Rail's contract with RSCVA.
I have a motion on it. I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those with the remaining members signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No.
I have one opposition out of 5 to 1. So, all right. Well, thank Mr. Wells for his job, and we'll move forward from here. Process, number 6, process for selection of integrated marketing firm.
The good news is this closely mirrors our earlier discussion on the CEO search firm selection. We have narrowed it down. There's 4 marketing firms that I'm proposing present to the marketing committee. Hour-long presentations talking about their strengths and how they can fulfill the requirements of the RFQ. The marketing committee, with the input of the panel I put together, will listen to the presentations and identify 2 top firms to come to the, that would be to come to the April board meeting or a separate meeting and present a creative assignment to the entire board, and the board would ultimately select one out of the 2 finalists. So that is my report. I'm very comfortable with this direction, and legal counsel and I have spent quite a bit of time making sure that we fall within the open meeting requirements and constraints.
Thank you, Mrs. Cunningham.
Yes.
Is there any discussion in regards, there was discussion previously, but is there any further, is the board acceptable with that process? All right. Do we need a motion? Okay, I need a motion to accept that, move to accept that process. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, Mrs. Cunningham, we were very, very short on time. Let's get through these
I
presentations.
suggest we don't even go over this. If there's anything on the highlights that somebody would like to ask us about, or if staff has anything they'd like to highlight, it can be addressed later on, just more informational in nature. Thank you.
I'll move to accept the report as presented by staff.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed. Motion carries unanimously. Legal counsel report. Do we have any legal issues?
Nothing to report.
Nothing, no issues at this time. Looking for board member comments regarding future items. Mr. McGovern.
About 2 months ago, I started looking very seriously at what was going on, if you will, the mountains that were out there that this board was climbing, the vetting that was being done in both the marketing side and with the CEO. At that point in time, I started having discussions with the board of directors of the Chamber of Commerce, who I represent, and because of additional workloads that I now have managing shopping centers in both Portland, Oregon and Salt Lake City, my time is being spread very thin. My first obligation is to my employer, and I expressed these concerns to the Chamber of Commerce and suggested that a change sooner than later to replace me on the board of directors was appropriate, so that the new individual would have the opportunity to go through the vetting processes for both the marketing group and the CEO, who that individual would live with. At last week's board of directors meeting, I officially notified the board that I would be resigning from the RSCVA board effective the 23rd of March. I believe the next meeting is on the 24th of March. And at that time, or I believe the Chamber of Commerce has already submitted a letter to the RSCVA nominating Mike Hicks from First Independent Bank of Nevada. Mike Hicks from First Independent Bank. Mike did spend some time here today at the meeting. He just couldn't stay because of the length of the meeting. So it is with regrets that I leave a number of unfinished items and resign my position effective March 23rd.
Well, I had this conversation with Mr. McGovern. It comes with a heavy heart that we are going to have to accept his resignation based upon his direction. I would look for an agenda item next month to appoint Mr. Hicks to the, from the Chamber of Commerce. We'd look, hopefully get a letter from them with their recommendation. We do have that. Okay, so we'll have that for the March agenda. And hopefully you'll be able to attend the March, and we can just, you know, present you with a token of our gratification.
Could we have the meeting where I'll be in March?
Sure, yeah, sure. Where is that going to be, in Thailand? Hopefully.
Yeah, it'll be in southern Thailand.
Oh, perfect. Okay, we're going to have a meeting in Thailand. All right. With that being said, any other agenda items? I want to make sure that we bring back the agenda item from earlier that we pulled today for the appointment of the treasurer and secretary for next month. And also, that should be it. And then we also want to make sure that we have a presentation in front of the entire board by Mr. Chisel in regards to the $2 downtown surcharge. And that should be it. Any other board member comments? Seeing none, I'm going to open it up to public comment. And for the Mrs. Brandhorst, you have open public comment. And let me just make sure that every board member, you have to stay to the end. We're down to 5 members, please. Thank you.
John, you too?
Yeah. We made everybody mad.
I am the United States President, and my name is Kathy Brandhorst. Yes, the trouble is with most department stores and most shopping centers, I am getting lots of complaints about the Orientals going into the areas, and they are stealing from department stores, and they're also stealing products that don't belong to them. And also the grocery stores are complaining that they are stealing the groceries out of the grocery stores, especially Smith's and Fowlis. Fowlis is a department store for clothing, and they have been complaining about the clothing being stolen out of the store. Also, the airport, I went to the airport yesterday, and they parked the aircrafts that are carrying the mail on the property of the airport, and they are complaining that the ones on death row, like Susan Diaz and Linda Diaz, are still inside the aircrafts, stealing my mail and stealing my packages that belong to me. So I just wanted to mention that the aircrafts cannot move out because they carry the machine guns to steal the mail and make sure that the aircrafts are empty with the mail. Oh my. And so I just wanted to briefly let you know this is still going on at the airport. And Chris Bart has been the one that carries machine guns to shoot down the U.S. military and steal their luggage out of the airport too. And I just wanted to point that out too. So, okay, I will wrap it up. Thank you.